afternoon to you. For those of you that I haven't met, I'm Michael Sheargold, and I'm delighted to be here this afternoon to facilitate and have us navigate through the Future Agent Summit. Now, I'm just not sure, and I just want to do a couple of age checks in the room. I think some of you have slipped in here somehow and missed the future agent bit. So I think anyone who is over the age of what do we say, John, 32? 40. Can you please stand up? Right. And you're asked to move towards the back of the room because your session's starting a little... No, just joking. Look, it's fantastic to be here today, and on behalf of REI New South Wales, I think it's a really interesting time for the profession. When you look at it, and this is the 5th year, there has been some kind of summit or think tank or development process that is focused on how do we make a difference in the profession. So, you know, and I was just chatting with John Cunningham before, the derivation of the word seminar is to seminate or to plant the seed. And you know, one of the things that this afternoon is really all about is planting the seed of where the profession goes and the responsibility that everyone who is within the profession has to making sure that makes a difference. Interestingly, this year alone, we will travel further and we will meet more people than our great-grandparents did in their entire lifetime. That's interesting. The last 12 months is the slowest rate of change we will experience for the rest of our life. So if we thought it was fast in the last 12 months, that is just an indication that it ain't going to get slow, it's going to get faster. So how do we cope with that? How do we deal with that? And how do we really take advantage of this well and truly? So to get us underway, none other than the Grand Poobah of REI New South Wales, commonly known as El Presidente, can we please welcome to the stage none other than Mr. John Cunningham.
Thank you, Michael, and welcome everyone. We're calling this the era of the property professional. This has been a journey that we begun 5 years ago when we started the summit concept, where we were gathering intel from the industry in a broader sense, not just within the confines of REI New South Wales. We went out to the broader industry. We found some very common themes running through those discussions that we had. First was education standards were so appalling. We were getting what we deserved in the industry. What was coming through was just poorly trained, poorly skilled people. We then moved on to where we can take that, how far can we go with this, and this is where we've ended up today, is that we've come to the realisation that there is only one path we can take, and that is the path to actual professionalism. Not just a word that is used in our behaviours and so on, but actually something we can aspire to achieve. It's raising the bar, raising our own bar. So I'm going to go through some background, I suppose, today on what this is about, so you get a bit of a context, and then I'll hand it over to the speakers to talk about their perspective on it. But I think it's important for everyone to understand why we are where we are. So we're going to explore what it means to you and how we can apply the learnings we get from today to setting new benchmarks and standards, unlike anything we've seen before. When Michael talked about the rapid rate of change, and he said, you know, this year is the slowest change we're ever going to see, I think that's what's so important. I was talking to John McGrath earlier about that, you know, when were we ready for this? When were we ready for this? We should have done this 5 years ago. The reality was the industry was not ready 5 years ago. The industry is ready right now to take these steps. So we're not only looking at a case of survival in the future, we're actually looking at thriving in a fully transformed environment. Let's make sure we're in the right place here. Good. So you can hear from a variety of our industry's leaders and some of the most respected and successful young practitioners. They all follow this path. I've done a bit of research on them, and it's really important. Purpose, passion, process, performance, and progress. And I think that's really important. I love getting, 5 Ps together. It's fantastic when you can find the right words. But they all just lend themselves perfectly to this situation. They're going to provide you with their perspective on what being a professional means to them. You will then learn how you can start that journey today. They apply guiding principles to all that they do. And they have values that they apply to those behaviours in all they do. And that's the real difference in terms of actually being a professional. You have all these things behind you that actually mean something, and the clients know they mean something. That's a massive shift. So we'll provide an overview of the journey so far and create a roadmap for you to follow. That's the big outcome. This pathway that we talk about is a 2-year journey before we can actually get that recognition from the Professional Standards Authority. There's a lot of milestones along that journey. Now, for those of you that were at ARIC, here we go. Okay. Chris Voss, one of my favourite speakers from ARIC, the FBI hostage negotiator, absolutely brilliant presentation. He talked about us being in the trust business. And the trust business is being a professional at the core of everything that you do. Trust comes with the advice, confidence and certainty that being a professional provides to everyone they deal with. Today could be the start of the most significant opportunity to shift your career if you are someone who wants to be proud, I use that word very, very sincerely, proud of being a property professional, and if you are keen to progress to the next level. This is not about providing the answer to all our problems in the industry, nor is it about being the saviour to the industry, but it is a critical part of the solution moving forward. The most important part is what you're going to do with it. So, what is this property professional thing all about, and why are we doing it? I see, interesting little clicker, that we're at a crossroads. That crossroads is a place of choice. Whatever crossroads you go to, you have a choice of 4 routes to take. Either the route that you've already been down, in other words, where did that come from? Did that just jump like double slides? Yeah, okay. So all those clicks I made are just coming in slowly, okay. So status quo is sort of probably where you've come from, and I believe status quo does not exist. It probably never has existed. And with the rate of change at the moment, it is definitely not existing anymore. We cannot do what we've always done. We can go down the discount processor path, and there are plenty of people that will do that. The PBs of the world and all the rest of the things that come along and distract us and try and disrupt us. The reality is that's a pathway that they can take, and there will be a place for them in our world, or in their world, not our world, I should say, sorry. Or you'll end up going out the back door because you just haven't adapted to change, you haven't evolved, you haven't seen the writing on the wall, and all of a sudden you're just going to get slam dunked. Obviously the choice that we want you to make is the professional advisor, the trusted advisor, going into a completely different space. Now I know there's a lot of people, in fact probably every single person in this room lives in this space today, otherwise you wouldn't be here. 1, you wouldn't have been invited, 2, you wouldn't have the inclination to actually come along and find out more about it. But that's the path that we can take, and I want to take you down that journey. I think change is one of those things where we have a choice. We're either constantly reacting to the change that's forced upon us, or we can make a decision to actually be the change. We actually create that change. And in the past, we've constantly been adapting to underquoting laws. Why did we get underquoting laws? We underquoted. Pretty simple, isn't it? Why do we have material fact laws? Because we told a few fibs. All these things happen for a reason, and they happen as a result of consumer confidence in what we do. So we have a choice. Either we're going to be constantly reactive, or we can turn the tables and be proactive in everything that we do. So how do we get there? That one didn't work, did it? Oh! Let me know if it does it to me again, okay? Professional Standards Council. This is a nationally recognised body under federal legislation that talks about who is a professional. What do you have to be to become a professional? So we need an actual recognition of this standard. There are only 6 professions in Australia, and you probably all know what they are: engineers, surveyors, lawyers, accountants, and so on. They've taken that path. They've actually had that full recognition happen. They have to approve a scheme. Now our scheme will take 2 years to actually get approved. There's a lot of hoops to get through, and we're going to have to hit some hurdles, we're going to hit some roadblocks, we're going to hit all these things, but we're resolved to follow this through, and I hope you'll join us on that journey. But first of all, the great opportunity is that we can be journey ready. We can actually start that process today. We don't have to wait for the scheme to be actually approved. We can get through those roadblocks, we can get through those hurdles, so long as we do it collectively. Oh, this is really interesting, isn't it? Where should I be pointing this up? There, maybe. There we go. Complacency. I had a talk with John McGrath earlier, and John used this word. And to me, it's what it's all about. The biggest hurdle to me is complacency. which is seen in our beliefs of the status quo and our lack of desire to change significantly. For too long now, the industry has been living in a complacency bubble, ignoring the changes occurring around us. And in recent years, those changes have come in rapid fire. Shrinking fees and shrinking relevance, which Shannon will be talking about soon as well, in consumer minds. That's what's happening. But how did it happen? What caused that? We stuck our heads in the sand. We had a sense of entitlement about everything that we did. And we lived in a fragmented, silo-based industry. And that's only been getting worse and worse. We're all concerned about the next deal and what the competitor next door was doing. And we had a decided lack of interest in the industry as a whole. Very interesting. We failed to look right in front of us at what the property consumer and the community we live in and work in were thinking about us. I love this quote. The greatest enemy of knowledge is not ignorance, it's the illusion of knowledge. We thought we knew what we were doing because we keep getting away with it. It worked. Oh, this works. This is okay. This is good enough. It's good enough. It's always good enough. But is it the best we can be? Poor consumer experiences over the last 10 to 20 years resulted in our current environment. Poorly educated, poorly skilled, and poorly focused agents. I'm generalising here. Please don't mean I'm talking to you guys. But that's an industry view. Agents became more focused on themselves rather than how they made their clients and customers feel. But behind the scenes, consumers' expectations were changing and they wanted better. The door had been opened wide for the disruptors to jump in, and jump in they did. With the absence of perceived value, positive experiences and relevance, they have been given free rein to apply their fear tactics and misleading deceptive spin, and price or cost has become the issue. Friction in the transaction environment has been our own fault, but we have the opportunity to smooth that out. Come with me. Again, another great quote. That was Red Adair. This is way back, guys. This is like from the 30s when this one came along. It's expensive to hire a professional, wait until you hire an amateur. And Pete Matthews is going to talk a lot about the difference between the two today. So, as an industry, we opted for the quickest, easiest and cheapest entry level and ongoing CPD training without any consideration given to learning outcomes. And to my mind, that showed we actually didn't care. We didn't care about the bigger picture. We didn't care about the effects that was having. This approach was by default supported by successive state governments who dumbed down education standards, and as a result we've ended up with a cocktail of disruption and full-on distraction, which I see it being more about. We are constantly distracted by the concept of disruption. Without foundation, product and regulatory knowledge, this training was absorbed and applied without any understanding of what an agent's responsibilities and obligations are to all property consumers. In my view, how can we actually provide property-related advice if we don't know what we're talking about? We're dealing with people's biggest assets, and we're talking a whole lot of nonsense. So as a result, we've simply become our own worst enemy. I got that quote from Craig Ponty the other day, and now we're paying the price. Okay. Fortunately, in my view, things are changing, and particularly in the past few years, where the consumer has at last been noticed and the industry trainers are delivering a new twist on what's good for the consumer is good for the business. I've got a feeling these slides are actually, I'm behind myself here.
Just skipped one.
Did I just skip one? Thank you. There it is. Good. That's the quote. What's good for the consumer is good for the business. Now, it's debatable who this quote came from. I believe it was Richard Branson, but please correct me if I'm wrong on that. We've seen the emergence of some outstanding trainers over the last 5 years who are delivering great systems, disciplines, dialogues, accountability, psychological and life skills to an eager market. We actually had Pancho, for those of you that know, and Alex, you'll know Pancho well, into our office this morning. And I tell you what, in my 40 years in the real estate industry, that was a life-changing moment for me. However, much more needs to be done than just a focus on performance to create a new pathway to become a property professional. And that's why I go to the next one. I've got to be clear here. It's certainly not all negativity in our world. In fact, I believe it's the complete opposite. As there are many outstanding professionals like our presenters today and those of you who have attended today who are changing the game from the inside, and that's where it has to come from. However, we still need to reinvent ourselves collectively and also, as a result, go on the offensive. We need to turn the tide and deliver to the consumer the service expectations they deserve and desire. And then we can actually create a real differentiation from being just a real estate agent to being a true property professional. That's slide 11. Sorry, guys. Did that one, didn't I? Okay. So, where it all starts. We can set the framework for education, we can set the framework to build on that knowledge, we can set the framework to apply that knowledge. It comes down at the end to know-how. We have an opportunity through this scheme to actually change the game that we're in. We've got the reform package coming through from the New South Wales State Government, which will filter into other states. But what we've got to do is change that perception of what we are. And it changes in many, many ways. So it starts here. It starts with getting education right. It starts with actually knowledge, because once you learn, you can then apply that knowledge to the marketplace. We then move into where it ends up. Ethics, integrity, respect. Really important considerations. And when I talk about respect, I talk about respect that we earn and respect that we give. One thing I think I've noticed really clearly in the last few years is the lack of respect we have for each other. It was great to see Tim Foote and Piers van Hamburg having a good chat today. You know, they're competitors right next to each other, but that's respect. And that's what it used to be like. I know, John, when you started years ago, there was a lot more respect between practitioners in our world. And we've got to bring that back. To me, very, very important consideration in the world that we're about to go to. This learning journey will never end. And as a result of the outcomes for the property consumer will be enhanced enormously, and that is what our ultimate goal is all about. This is all about the community we're in, the property consumer that we deal with. Today is about us creating a recognised, skilled professional who is guided by a set of ethics, operates with complete integrity, is respected and shows respect to all they deal with. And as a result, they will be successful by both design and desire. And they will earn the community's respect as a pinnacle of their achievement. There's a few simple things that I've learnt in my 40-year career that really stand out for me. The more you learn, the more you earn. The harder you work, the bigger the reward. The more you give, the better you feel. And interestingly enough, through reciprocity, the more you get. Now, our next speaker is someone who has, in my view, exemplified that in a massive way. Their whole career has been about this, and it is with great pleasure I introduce Mr. John McGrath to present our next presentation.
So I like the saying, the harder you work, the luckier you get.
There we go, that's you. That's
I think it's the other slide, Steve. Thanks, John.
So on we go. Thanks, mate.
Yeah, cool.
Do you need the clicker as well?
No, because I'm on an iPad, but Dave's
Good.
Dave will be my clicker at the back.
So
Thank you.
technically advanced. Thank you.
So there's like many thousands, 10, 12,000 people could have been here today within a short commute, and yet 1%, 0.5% turns up. I think this is part of our challenge, is I don't think people take this industry the way they should. If you think about the importance of what we do, I'm not saying we save lives, but we're certainly doing an important part of the social chain of when people buy and sell and move and invest. And you think about the financial quantum that's involved in that, which is significant. In fact, for most people, it's the most significant transaction ever, of course. The question is, why is our industry up until now, and I think it's great what the REI and other institutes are doing, why is the industry up until now, why have people not chosen to undertake the same levels of education and professional standards that other industries that I think are similar to ours? And I look at, you look at legal, you look at accounting. I don't like to bring medical into it because they are literally saving lives, but at the end of the day, these people are committed lifelong learners, and yet our industry seems to wing it all the time. And as Johnny said before, you know, the bad tags that we've got as an industry, and still to this day, I think it's getting better because of us, the people that are here. This is the Smart Brigade that is generally doing it much better. But the industry is just, you know, people out there, they're not realising, you know, the way that things have changed and what people are now expecting from us as an industry. And people are expecting, you know, things like honesty and transparency and real time and like stuff that should be basic to us in such an important transaction and relationship. These things should be basic, but they're not being delivered by our industry. So I think this is a great initiative. Johnny and I did a quick little interview for the blog before, and you know, I said, you know, this is a fantastic initiative, maybe should have happened 10 years before, but anyway, it's happening now, which is better than not happening at all. So well done, the Smart Brigade, turning up to the event. And, you know, how much did they pay to get here, Johnny? Was this a large amount? Zero. Okay, that's pretty good. So, like, price was not the issue, and most people could find generally a few hours in their diary, and I've looked at, you know, the speakers to come, and, you know, you've got Shannon Whitney, you've got Will Phillips, you've got Carolyn Balderstone, you've got a plethora of incredible speakers, and you've got the Institute putting on this great event, and 1% turns up. So that's kind of part of the issue. So what I would want you guys to do is, because this is the Smart Brigade 1%, when you go back, like, throw the pebble in the pond. You know, say to people that didn't get here from your offices, from your community, your competitors, because I'm with peers here, you know, I don't think anyone's a competitor except ourselves. The only competitor you really have in life is sitting in your seat right now, because it's all possible. So this is, for me, really important. So Dave, we'll go on to the first slide, if we can. So I think that a couple of things. One is this is shifting from, you know, a service industry or service economy to an experience economy. It's not just people expect you to turn up and open the door and list their property and put some ads in the paper. People actually want to feel the way it's happening is the way they would want and expect it to happen. And again, I think of the importance of this, and yet I think the observation I have of agents and the lack of attention to detail and the lack of follow through and so many things. You know, people every single week say to me, oh, I looked at 12 properties on the weekend and only 2 agents called me back. And I'm thinking, my God, someone gets out of bed, they get themselves organised, they arrange to have their kids babysat, and they arrange their day and they go and look at properties, and the agent, whose only job it is to greet them, look after them, then follow them through, kind of doesn't do the follow through bit. And I think, my God, we've got to change this industry. And when I got into the industry 35 years ago, I didn't want to just have a good business. That was kind of important. But I wanted to think one day that maybe myself and my teammates and then the industry can actually change the way we're doing stuff, because I don't think it's good enough. I still don't think it's good enough. The other thing is conscious business. So for me, that's about, there is the opportunity for you to do this business. In fact, I would encourage everyone to do this business in a manner that works for your values system. See, I want everyone to go home and not just say, I earned some great GCI today and I sold 2 properties or I auctioned 4 properties. I want everyone to go away and say, I did it within my value set. So I did it with integrity and honesty and care and empathy and compassion and whatever other things are important to you in your value system. And I think when we start doing that, because there is definitely a process, technical part, you've got to do stuff and you need to know stuff. But then there's the other bit, which is, you know, you have to act in a certain way and care, and you need that energy. So for me, those 2 things are equally important. Thanks, Dave. So I'll give you, there's about 9 things I think into what I call Agent 3.0. So this is, I think, the direction we're going as an industry and the changes that I think need to be in place like today, not in 3 years' time, because as Mike said, you know, last year was fast changing, next year's going to be faster changing. So the first one, Dave. So ethical brands, touched upon that. I think the winning brands will be ethical brands, where people think about, I know that company, I know, and by the way, individual brands are clearly equally important as overarching brands. So whether you work for Ray White or Hookers, Lang & Simmons, like, it's you within that brand as well. So both brands need to work on this at the franchisor or principal level, and of course at the agent level. So ethical brands, people will be attracted to ethical brands because there will be some that will stand up and shine, and they will be the ones that start eating up the market share for me. So being ethical and the way you operate, and the second one I think is going to fit in with that one. So dealing with integrity and transparency, and I look at simple things like stuff like price guides and stuff like price quotes at auctions, and there's still people and you know, they talk to me about, oh yeah, but John, if you tell the truth, then buyers add on and they don't turn up the auction. That's a service process, right?
You have to build a reputation above the industry so people know when I buy from Stefan and he tells me it's 1.2 to 1.3, I can take that to the bank. That's a real quote. And yeah, sure, occasionally we get 12 buyers and they hook onto a property and it goes for more, but generally speaking, and you know, because he keeps me informed along the way, if it's going up or down from there, I get it. So that's your personal brand. So why the industry still thinks it's important to tell vendors
More than a property is worth until buyers less than it's worth, and they're confounded when they get a bad reputation. It's just beyond me. So, you know, integrity, transparency, not hiding anything. Material facts is a great kind of basic around that, but it's not just material facts. It's, you know, telling people everything they need to know to make an informed decision. So I want to know the neighbourhood. I want to tell people everything that's happening, because the last thing I want to do as a real estate professional is to put someone into a home that they're not going to love. And I would rather, I'll find a buyer. Every property I've ever listed in my life, I found a buyer from, unless a vendor decided to withdraw from the process, but there's always a buyer, but do it the right way. So you go at home night, you sleep well, and you build a reputation, you create raving fans. So that's for me really critical. Number 3. More human and authentic. So as technology becomes more pervasive, which I think is a good thing. We all have 1,000 apps on our phone and we run our lives from our phone. I think it's a good thing when they're well used and leveraged. But people are also looking for authenticity, and some of the things that I've found with agents is they go through a training process which is really important and really good, but then they kind of sometimes lose their soul and they lose their character and they lose, you know, the things, elements that make them individual and unique. So really what I think you need to do is discover yourself first. I'm not going to get too deep here, we only have 12 minutes, but you've got to discover who you are first, and then take who you are into the marketplace with integrity and transparency. And that is, when you then pour the training and the knowledge and the expertise you need, and then you bring technology to play, that becomes an irresistible recipe. Number 4, real time. So people are expecting everything faster now. I mean, if you say to someone, great, could you send that over to me? You sort of pick up your phone, you look and you see if it's there. And if it's 60 seconds later, it's not there, you start, you know, getting a bit frustrated by it. So real time, what used to be acceptable a year or 2 ago is no longer acceptable. So from my perspective, everything that we are doing as an industry, as an organisation, or you as an individual needs to be directed towards getting the results faster. So my view is days on market needs to be faster, delivery of service, ability to get property on the market needs to be quicker. These are the things that we need to start compressing the time frame, because people no longer are prepared to wait for that. Number 5, end-to-end solutions. So again, I think that the car industry has done this pretty well over the years, that, you know, they know when you come in to buy a car that you want everything else looked after. You want a service plan, and you want insurance, and you want finance, and you want, you know, maybe the armour guard to make sure your Duco is protected. And there are now people giving away. I went to Sutton's the other day with a friend who's looking at a car just out here at Rosebery, and it was kind of cool. I know they've had it for a few years, but it just reminded me what they have is you buy a car from their dealership and they give you a car wash for life. Not one, that's many, because some people only wash it once, but yeah, anytime you can go in 3 times a week, 7 times a week if you want to get your car washed. And this is about, you know, the experience economy, and this is around end-to-end solution. I am going to look after everything that you might possibly need in the process of buying, selling, managing, living in, renting this property. So from my perspective, end-to-end solution going forward in this industry is going to be more critical. If you just think all we do is sell you a property and manage it for you, I think you'll be overrun by people that are doing a lot more than that. Next one. Number 6, digital, social, mobile. So no surprise that, I guess, on my list of 9 things about where I think this industry needs to continue to focus on, the digital is right up there. Digital, social, mobile, it's fascinating to see the, I've seen it over the last 6 months, the rise of social. I mean, social's been part of most people's lives for a number of years, but I think from a corporate and industry perspective, it's really hitting a sweet spot now. And I think going forward, the ability to not only use REA or domain or whatever as your platform, but your ability to access social platforms as well, both for looking for leads as well as looking for buyers, is really, really critical. Virtual reality, of course, becoming a big area as well, but I think the agents that are not just, and you know, to say, yeah, we put our property on the internet, that's kind of like, it's really very low base response. It's how well are you marketing it? What's the quality of your data? What visual techniques? They say that 400%, engagement improves by 400% if there's a video element attached to it. So you get a property, you get a floor plan. I mean, for me, without a floor plan, it's not on the market. Without a price guide, it's not on the market. Without, a dozen or so beautiful photographs, and without a video, it's kind of not on the market. So what are you doing personally to make sure that it's engaging? I've been looking for a property kind of passively recently, and I just know that, like you guys, like most of our customers, I'm busy and I go there and you get this little thing, you're on the couch, you stick REA on, you put a suburb in, you put a price guide, and all of a sudden you get this list and you're flicking through and you're trying to get rid of as many as quickly as you can that don't fit because you don't have a lot of time to look at everything. So price guides, often you overlook them. 54% REA says without price guides get overlooked. So half your buyers are kind of gone in a puff of smoke. And then I'm looking at photos quickly and then you say, oh, that looks interesting. So you look for a floor plan, it's not there, I'm too busy. I sort of go back to the big screen TV. And then I'm looking for a video. I do like it, it's got a floor plan, it's in my price range. And then I hit a video, there's no video button, and I'm thinking, God, I'm too busy. So what are you doing around digital and social and all the platforms to really make your property stand out? Now, it doesn't mean for me that local print is not going to continue to play a role for a period. I think at some point it won't, in the main, generally, but for a period it will. But right now, it's about what are you doing on digital. Number 7. Thanks, Dave. Technology, big data, algorithms. So, the big data companies, which is probably the biggest growth sector within the subsection of community of the technology community, is now able to predict stuff based on large amounts of data. So a friend of mine who has a house several hours south of Sydney on the beach, and he's a CEO and a shareholder in a major data company, and I said to him, Tim, I went and visited him. We're good friends. I went and visited him and he said, oh, this is my new company and I'm the CEO and I've got an investment. And it looked really cool. And I went back 6 months later and he went from 1 floor, he now had 5 floors in the space. It's literally like 3 streets across from here. It's on Hunter Street. And I said, how'd you go from 1 to 5? He said, man, this is the future. He said, I'm not saying, he said, you can see here and there's all these people. And I said, so tell me about our industry and my business. How is it that we can leverage in that? And he said, well, I'll give you an idea. He said, I've got a place 2 or 3 hours south of Sydney. I think it's 2.5 hours. It's a beachfront. He said, if I said to you, John, I want to sell the place, what would you do? And I said, well, in terms of marketing, I guess we'd go to REA and I guess we'd probably put it in a local publication. We'd probably put it in an Eastern Suburbs and or North Shore publication, try and expand it. And he said, yeah, it's all very predictable. And he said, it's all very, shotgun approach. It's not terribly well targeted. I said, so what's the alternative? He said, well, if I applied the right algorithms, I could identify the postcodes in which the most likely buyers for this property are sitting in tonight. And he said, and it won't be the local postcode. I can tell you, I know everyone that owns property around here. He said, I haven't applied an algorithm, but just common sense is telling me it's not a local person here, it's from somewhere else. And I said, so you can tell me which postcode? So he said, yep, you could direct market to a suburb. And he said, I'll go beyond that. He said, within the postcodes, I could almost guarantee you, if with the right data and the right algorithms, which we don't currently have, but we could develop, we could tell you which streets they probably live in. And he said, I have no idea, but I would back myself that we might be able to start telling you houses in the near future they live in. And I said, this is pretty amazing, Timmy. And I thought it sounded like the Jetsons, but most people, John, you'd remember it, and Mike, you'd remember it, but most people just politely laughing, but we know. Anyway, so I said to him, just tell me more about this. He said, well, I can find out that, because he said we have these massive data they get from NAB and Woolies and Foxtel and a whole array of these big data companies, and they bring it in, they mash it all up, and then they can spit it out. And he said, I can tell you that, maybe the buyers, 38% of them drive Audis and they eat Toblerone chocolate and they drink a certain type of spirits, and they live in these suburbs, and he narrows it down, and all of a sudden you're starting to talk to a mass market of one, potentially. And so it was interesting, and then I went down, because we opened not long after that, maybe 6 weeks after that, we opened an office in Berry, and I went down, I was talking to Mira, the principal there, and I said, Mira, how's the market? And she said, oh, it's really good.
she said, everyone's been lovely in the community and they're welcoming me. And I said, sales, how are they going? She said, oh, it's great. We had 2 good sales this week. And I hadn't told her anything about this conversation. That office happens to be about 2 hours south of Sydney, interestingly and coincidentally. And she said, oh, really 2 good sales. She said, one was 1.95, one was 1.91. I said, okay, they're great sales, well done. And she said, yeah, the people, one of them interestingly lived in Redfern and one lived in Surrey Hills. Same postcode, different but adjoining suburbs. And she said they're both in the banking industry, but surprisingly they didn't know each other. And I'm thinking, so this is exactly what Tim was saying. So here are 2 separate groups that lived a few streets away that both decided that having a house 2 hours south of Sydney near the beach was a good idea, and they turned up independently and bought properties within $40,000 of each other. So it starts to make you realise that this stuff is real and this is what we have to be doing. So now most companies can't afford to engage in this mass activity yet. It'll become more available, but you have to start checking it out and understanding this is the direction we're going. 8th one, thanks Dave. Asia and international, of course, we saw the huge influx recently of particularly China and Asia, but as the global economy becomes exactly that, more global, and people are looking to park their overseas currencies in a currency and a country and a political environment they feel safe in, because most people that invest from overseas, the majority, it's actually less about the property, it's more about getting their currency into a safe environment and a safe asset. So they deem bricks and mortar is safe, they think the Australian currency dollar and the Australian political environment is safe, so and do that. So again, it doesn't matter where you're selling, it's really critical that you understand exactly how to deal with the subcultures, because the Chinese might have pulled back a little bit because of their capital outflow restrictions, but there's Malaysian markets, there's Indonesian markets, there's India, there's Singapore, there's a whole range of other sub-communities, countries that are coming. And what do you like? I was in a group, one of our guys the other day, and we're with a Chinese contingent, and they have a large development that we're looking to engage with. Anyway, I was horrified because the principal of the company was there, and he's the founder of the business, and probably worth several hundred million, maybe $1 billion. And he handed his card, and my guy grabbed it and handed like one hand, and I'm just thinking, man, I just can't believe it. You need to understand the culture of the exchange of business cards and how important this is. But they hadn't done the homework, right? So you guys are here doing the homework. You've got to keep doing more homework about understanding exactly it is. How do these people from different cultures expect to be treated and looked after and negotiated with as well? 9th one, and community. So kind of, it's obvious in a way, and the Smart Brigade is, I'm sure, already engaged in supporting the community. You guys are here, but it's really critical going forward that it would be naive, I think, for anyone in our industry that serves the community and relies upon the communities to support and write lots of large cheques. And when was the last time you wrote a cheque for $30,000 to someone to do anything other than buy a large asset like a car or a house? Not many service industries get that. So we are very well rewarded for our great work by the community. Therefore, we have to, because I believe in karma, and if you don't give back and you don't keep that circle of karma continuing, there will be a discontinuation of the support from the community. So my view is, as an individual or as a company, are you going to put 1% of your earnings back in? Is it going to be 5%? Is it going to be, whatever it is, it needs to be something that's a meaningful contribution to support. And you don't need to bang the drum about it. If you want to let people know, that's fine, but you just need to be there giving back to the community. So for me, this is kind of where Agent 3.0, and if you use it as a checklist and say to yourself, okay, what are the bits that I'm really great at? What would be great for me would be like above 8 out of 10. So 10 out of 10 would be I'm best on planet at that. Anything less than an 8, you are at risk, in my opinion, because things are changing so rapidly. If you're not supporting the community, if you're not delivering in real time, if you're not transparent, if you continue to list properties and don't quote the right prices as an example of lack of transparency or lack of integrity, you are at risk today, not in 5 years, today, because this is what people are expecting everywhere. And the problem has been one of the issues I think has been there were so many people in the industry not providing this, you kind of got lost and everyone said, oh, they're agents, they don't tell the truth, but all agents are the same. That's not the case. There are agents now that are starting to single out and step up above
And I think with the Institute and with John's driving passion for this, of people upgrading their professionalism very, very quickly, the game will change in real time as we speak. So hopefully that's a little bit of a summary for you. I've gone half a minute over time, so I'll hand back to John. But pleasure to be here, and I really hope that everyone embraces it as you have, John, because it's a very important part.
Thanks, John. Thanks, John. Good to see you. Yeah. So some great food for thought there. Would you agree? Yeah? Well, the next gentleman who I'm about to introduce has been, for the second year in a row, awarded the prestigious title of REB's #1 agent within Australia. So out of the 60 or so thousand agents that exist in Australia, this gentleman in the last 12 months has transacted around 180 properties, a tenacious negotiator and someone who is focused very much so on delivering a great service experience. Please welcome Alexander Phillips. Welcome, welcome.
Thank you.
So Alexander's going to have a chat, and then we've got time for a couple of questions, by the way. Great.
Yeah.
I like the saying, the harder you work, the luckier you get. I think it's being really consistent and continually doing what you do, and making sure you've got a great name in the market.
That's right. Don't worry.
One reason why people do use us is they know how hard we work, that we are still really in the thick of what it is to actually get a house sold, which is day-to-day running of open homes and putting out sign boards, doing callbacks, just doing what actually is there to get the job done. We don't put it on to someone else within the team.
Hey, good job, mate.
Thanks for your support. Because I'm coming in the area, though.
Yeah, let me do this for Shane Duron.
Saturdays up early, I have to go to the gym or have breakfast.
Brilliant, thanks mate.
Collect all my open packs in the office, confirming our vendors, that they're ready for the day. Sort of making calls from 7:30, 8 in the morning, and then it's back-to-back open homes. A lot of phone calls of getting back to buyers, vendors. The minute we walk up out of each door, we call every one of our vendors to give them feedback. So it's a full-on day. It's probably the busiest day of the week, and it's the hardest thing is actually trying to eat something because we're always on the run. Are you ready to act on something if you found the right one? How are you going? Our agency's been in business for 2.5 years now, but I've been selling for 14 years. I think it's just doing the basic things right and continually doing them and not taking your foot off the pedal. That's building a great database, making a lot of calls, being someone that is informative, approachable, just being real.
Hi everybody, my name is Alexander Phillips. John, thanks for having me here today. I suppose something that we've realised probably more so over the last few years, that real estate isn't about the agent, and I think that's what everyone's caught up in these days. It's about the consumer, and obviously you're there to facilitate a sale, and I think it's about making sure that you deliver on the best service that you can and going above and beyond. I suppose John, when I first walked in here a moment ago, said, my team's referred you a couple of listings recently, which I have. Liz Allen, who actually sold for in the eastern suburbs, moved over to the north, and he's working with John. And a few examples, I suppose, what I'm going to talk about today is some case studies of what we've done and what we expect from our clients, what we actually deliver to them. But Liz has referred me to properties that we've listed both of them, but it's probably not so much that we've listed the properties, but Liz will keep continually giving referrals to us, even if we hadn't listed the properties, because the minute she gives the information to us, we call the potential lead. We then might have left them a message. We go back to Liz saying, thanks for the lead, I've left the client a message, I'll follow up tomorrow. We then follow up the next day, maybe leave another message, and follow up the third day and get in contact with the client. Go do the appraisal, call Liz after the appraisal saying, I've appraised the property, give them our opinion. We're one of 3 agents, hopefully we'll get it. And then from there on, we're just continually updating them. Now, if we'd missed both those listing leads that Liz had given us, she'll still give them, and keep them coming because of the communication that we've passed on, to Liz throughout the whole process. But I suppose the first thing that I've learned, from John McGrath when I was at McGrath was, 6-star customer service, and I think a lot of agents forget that, but I actually don't understand what it means, because I think if you position yourself in a vendor's shoes and put yourself in selling their home and how much effort goes into selling the property, the presentation, the actual mentality of having to get the property on the market, it's quite demanding, and I think you've got to respect that and make sure that you deliver on exactly what you're saying to ensure that you not only get them the best result, but they understand that you've done absolutely everything possible to get the property sold. And there's many examples that we can give, but there was a property that we sold this week at Moore Park Road. We appraised it a year ago. We walked into the property, 3 other agents had walked in, said, you can just put it on the market, now's the best time, you don't need to present it right, get it photographed, put it on, we can have it sold for you in 21 days. We walked in there and said, you've got to move out, you've got to paint it, you've got to spend about $50,000. This time of year is not the best time of year because it was the middle of school holidays. This is the right way to do it. And actually she followed our advice. It took her about 6 to 12 months to end up getting it ready, but we sold it in about 12 days, and she knows that we gave her advice, and she saw us as more of an advisory service than a real estate agent. And I think these days that's what people are looking for. We win so much business over other agents because we actually tell them what they need to do. We give them advice not only on presentation but the right timing, the right marketing, and obviously we then deliver on that. So it's about, I suppose, understanding what the client's looking for, but making sure that you actually deliver on it. I'll give you an example of also something else, another sale that we recently did on more. This is more around the customer service side of things and the evolution of a client and how they can follow you, through from day one of your real estate business to maybe 10 years down the track. But when I started about 12, 13, 14 years ago, I think it was now, I was an assistant at McGrath. There was a client, we used to really focus on doing buy work, because buy work is a way of, obviously, if you're starting out, getting a good client base and actually then people trusting what you say. But there's a client of mine, Lisa Kitching, who we only just sold for last week in Bronte, that I was servicing her as a buyer. I showed her probably about sort of 50 properties over the space of 18 months. She ended up buying through another agent. We appraised her property in North Bondi. We missed that business. She went into my past client database. Once she'd bought that property in Bronte, we'd missed out on that initial property. But for the last 10 years, I've been calling her with really good, relevant pieces of information around the market, around what's selling, what's listed, market forecasts, and we've recently listed and sold a property, but we were the only agency that was in the door because of the information we were giving her. It was really good information that she could actually use, and she sold it at the peak time. She had a property reserve was like 5.5, went for 6.15, but she'd been waiting for us to tell her when the best time was to sell. She could have sold it 3 years ago and sold it for $4.5 million, but we kept advising her that the market's moving. She was really a vendor wanting to sell at the top of the market, but we study the market very closely and obviously noticed that the market was topping out, and she listened to our advice. But I suppose customer service comes down to how you perceive yourself as well. It's not about you, it's about helping the actual vendor and helping them get the best price. So it's not about promoting your the best sales or the highest sale price. You're not going there talking about yourself, and that's where we win a lot of business. When we go in and praise properties, we talk nothing about what we do. We don't talk anything about who we are, what we've done. More about what we're actually going to do for the vendor in the background to get their property sold and get the best price. So. And we don't go, I've never walked into one appraisal in the last 2 years saying I'm the #1 agent in Australia, we're the best, sign this agreement, we sell more than anyone else. We go in there saying, okay, well, what does it mean to you that we sell 5 times the amount of properties in Bronte than any other agent. Well, we meet more buyers. We're going to get more buyers through the door. Real estate's a numbers game. It's bums on seats. We know all the buyers. We've got the marketplace wrapped up. 7 out of 10 of every buyer that walks through the front door, we know by their first name. We know their behaviours. We know what properties they've been inquiring on. We know what properties they've registered on, and we know where they've bid to. So it gives us, ammunition, obviously, with the marketplace to be able to get the vendor the best result. And I think, these days, more and more, as real estate evolves and you see all these disruptions out there, you've got to do something a little bit different. But it's not really different. It's just dealing with what the consumers really want and not just working with what you want as an agent. So a few other things that I suppose it's really important is, that John was wanting to speak about today has been ethical and making sure that, I suppose, you've got a good name in the marketplace. And there's many ways you can do that, which is obviously the right quoting, saying what you're going to do to clients, saying what you're going to do not just to the buyer but the seller. But it's very easy to unravel that and obviously then no longer become a front runner in the marketplace. So you've got to make sure you're continually, obviously dealing with the changes of legislation, understanding what they are, making sure that your whole team understands that, and obviously focusing on making sure that you're continually evolving as an agent. Michael, did you have any questions today yourself? You said you wanted to ask a few questions.
Yeah, well, I think I'm back on, am I? I am, yes, there we go. So, Alexander, a couple of things that I think are really important. You said you study the market, that side of things. Any tips on how you go about that?
As in studying the buyers, or what's happening?
With the client who you advise, hey, don't sell yet, you want to sell at the top of the market, how did you go about, or what do you do within your agency to make sure that you can give that advice through to the client?
There's many indicators, not only within the agency but externally with what's happening globally. But we know the exact number of registered bidders that we've had at all of our auctions from January to current. We know the average number of buyers going through open homes. There's a lot of stats that we've got that we use that tell us what is happening in the marketplace. Even our financial arm that we've got with Shaw Financial, asking them, well, how many loan applications did you have last month versus this time last year, will give you also a very good indicator on what's happening if there's market changes, which we have seen a pretty big shift in the last couple of months. Probably, I'd say we're dealing with about 25 or 30% less buyers through all of our open homes and a number of registered bidders at auction.
Mm. So these are stats that any one of you can actually gather and put together. The question is, how are you utilising those from a client point of view? Remember, this is from a professional point of view, and I love it when someone says, "Oh, I'm an area specialist," and then I happen to ask them, "Okay, well, how many properties are on the market at the moment? How many properties will be competing with mine?" And just a few basic things, and they don't know.
Exactly, yeah. And the consumers out there want to know this information. Like, this is back-end information that you've got. We'll deliver it to them and work out how that's going to benefit them when the best time is to sell, upgrade, downsize, whatever it may be.
Yeah, fantastic. We've got time for 2 questions. So anyone got a question of Alexander?
You said that you advise the client on the way up when to sell, and if you're then now advising clients to sell, then you think the market might be topping off. So without coming across desperate, saying sell your property right now because now's the best time, what will your new strategy be when the market starts to drop?
Well, not necessarily, because it may be, that client might be looking at doing an upgrade, all right, and upgrading in a softer market's the best time to be doing it. So they should actually wait. Yeah. So it depends on, you've got to then understand why the client's, the vendor is selling. So you've got to, that's digging deeper, and then when they hear that advice from you saying maybe you should wait, 6 or 12 months, they remember that, because it's not like you going, the desperation, get it on the market now, the market's going backwards, and that's what everyone's doing right now.
Yep.
Or saying the market's levelling out. Well, I spoke to many people today saying, I'll just wait 6 to 12 months. Because if your property is worth 3, goes down to 2.7, that 6 goes down to 5.5, well, you're ahead by a couple of $100,000. So, and they actually, the consumer out there is very smart. They understand all that. So it's again, that comes back to how well you understand your client. It comes back to relationships that you've built over the last, how many times that you've been, speaking with them or dealing with them.
And the authenticity that comes through with that when you say, hey, it may not be the best time to sell given your circumstances and given what you're looking for, and not be in a rush. I mean, that whole commission breath thing, or the whole, I want what you're listing now, desperado is not very attractive.
Correct, yep.
In order to win business, well and truly. Great.
Any other questions, anyone? Chris, how are you?
How are you, mate?
Good, man.
Mate, you've always been happy and enjoyed doing your job, and I know how much you have you're committed to doing that over the years. So I know how much you like the people. But John talked about Agent 3.0. In your mind, and coaching young agents coming through your agency, what are you telling them that they need to upskill on to future-proof their opportunity? Because obviously some of the skills you learn along the way, some might not be skills.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think the couple of things that we're trying to upskill our guys is having really good data and knowing how to use that data, because I think these days more and more you've got to have clean data to be able to build a relationship, because there's so many different ways you can build relationships these days. But it's about making sure that you've got 500 great referral clients rather than 10,000 that you might speak to once a year. So I think if I was starting out again, it probably wouldn't change much, because you can pick up a phone, get a list of 20 buyers who come through an open home, get an understanding of what they're looking for, build a relationship with them. And the first 3 deals I did, I remember back at McGrath, we did introduce buyers to another property. And an interesting story of just a property I sold last year was the first property ever sold 14 years ago. Then I've already sold for this guy 4 times. So, I think going back to your question, it's about having really good knowledge of the marketplace, having really good data, and actually knowing how to use it. I think these days it's going more and more to a personal touch than just blanket emails and whatnot. Yeah.
And one more question from myself. On the whole property professional, so this is about moving from an industry to a true profession, accounting profession, the legal profession. Are there any qualities that you're looking for new team members coming on and joining you?
Yeah, there are. I think I suppose it comes down to the person and how real, how humble they are. What would they actually looking for over the next 5 or 10 years within our business. So I think there's so many people that we come across that we push away because they're more about wanting to make money now and become the best. They don't realise that it's a long-term play, and they have to be able to listen and learn. There's so many people out there, they think they know what they're doing, but it's great that everyone's in here today. But it's about obviously people that, and I'm still learning a lot, and that's I think what we're looking for.
Yeah. So someone who is real, that down to earth approach.
Yeah.
Love the fact that you've introduced the humility in the process.
Yep.
I think the coming in and sort of like look at me. It's just not appealing.
No, not at all.
And it's far more a turn off than it is a turn on. Might turn an individual on, but it doesn't actually turn on the market.
I suppose
if I look in the mirror and the say, you're looking really sharp today, yeah, baby. Which is good to actually do a bit of mirror work, but not that kind of mirror work that gets a little bit out of control.
Correct.
Yes.
It's about obviously the consumer, not the agent. So. Thank you.
Fantastic. One more question and we'll wrap.
Just a general question. Is there anything significant structurally you've done in your business to really take your business from where it was, say, 5 years ago to today? Is there any top 2 or 3 things?
What's interesting, like whatever we were doing 15 years ago, we're doing the same thing today. In building our database and maintaining it, I suppose it's just giving really good information to people that they can use, that they can then help make a decision on what they're looking at doing. But there's no fluffs, just straight to the point. We don't really have time for long lunches and things like that with clients. But what have we changed over the last few years? It's probably having more staff on the one listing, because I think these days a consumer is more and more demanding and is expecting more out of you as an agent. Particularly when you look at the fees we charge, it's a lot of money we charge to sell a house, I think. So, you know, the consumer is watching every step of what you do.
So on a service basis, are there any, I join your agency, are there some service standards or some non-negotiables that you have for someone coming in?
Yeah, definitely. Like, I think it's about making sure that what they say is what they do. You know, we're always training our staff around that, making sure that they understand what we're about as an agency and our perception in the marketplace, and they follow that.
Yeah, yeah, fantastic. Alexander Phillips.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well done. Johnny, coming up to say, oh, you're the clicker. Yeah. Excellent, very good. Bit of stage management happening behind us right now, which is always great. The next person I'm going to introduce you to has, for the past 5 years, has really been investing in how to enhance the leaders and sales team performance. And I think Carolyn's already just come up on slides. So where's the thunder? And please welcome, from Being Bold, which I absolutely love, none other than the fabulous Carolyn Balderstone.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Well, it's great to be here this afternoon, and I think that many of you in the audience are here today because there's a big question mark that's up in the air right now about what does the future look like for our industry, and who do we need to be within this industry to maintain our success and get so much out of this industry that we've done in the past. It's really interesting because I feel that for longevity to remain necessary in a real estate transaction and to ensure that we have a sense of relevance out in the marketplace, professionalising the industry to me is the absolute answer to that. So I'm really excited that you're all in the room today. And I know some of you, I was talking to you earlier, weren't even sure what today was kind of about, but I love that you're here anyway because it's demonstrating that you're very much engaged in what you're doing and what your profession is. It's interesting because what we want is for the consumers to choose to work with us. We want them to choose us as the professional. Does everyone agree with that? Is that what we're aiming for? And I recently, just this week actually, I had my annual, the 12-month skin cancer check thing, and I was presented with a choice. Do I go to my local skin cancer clinic, which is literally around the corner, and an $85 consultation fee? Or do I go to the dermatologist, that is a 45-minute drive from my house, and $245 for the same consultation? I chose to go to the dermatologist. The reason I did that is because in my eyes, my perception, my understanding of what the dermatologist is that they're the true expert in that field. Now, isn't that how we want the consumers to see us? The true experts in our field? So it got me thinking because over the time I've been in the industry, and it's 15 and a half years now, as Michael mentioned, the last 5 years I've been working very closely heading up the Bell Property Academy and training and coaching agents around the country, both entry-level and medical degree, and on top of that, a 3-year residency in dermatology versus the skin cancer, 4-year medical degree and a 2 or 3 week crash course on skin cancer. So why are we doing a 1-week course and then assuming that, hey, in the last 5 years, some very disturbing and alarming behaviours and attitudes from the new agents coming into the industry. So for me, I'm excited today to have the opportunity to talk to you about 3 key things. And it's a coach's view of what's happening out in the marketplace. I'm just going to see, hopefully this works better for me, John, than you. There we go. Oh, sorry. I've missed my other slide. But out in the marketplace, what are the 3 things that we need to look at a coach's view? The first thing that I'd like to quickly touch on is what are the behaviours and attitudes that I'm witnessing that are positive from new agents into the industry? And what are the negatives that still exist? Because those negatives are the things that are perpetuating the prejudice against us and the perceptions. I'll also look at what the truly committed agents are doing. High-level elite performers. They're looking for mentorship within real estate and outside of real estate to learn how to be better business people, to learn how to be better leaders, how to communicate. You need to learn these skills. It is a skill set. Almost every one of the top performers in the industry listen to themselves more than anything. So I want to talk about that really briefly. And the final thing is just identifying from my perspective what the gaps might be that we need to address in order to professionalise, and then what the way forward could be for that. So I've got a lot to talk about. To do that, I actually thought to myself, it's one thing to assume what the consumer wants, but I actually took it upon myself to go into a little focus group, a little survey, to find out what do the consumers need from us in order for them to see us as professionals. So I posed this question: what are the top 3 characteristics, traits or behaviours that a real estate sales agent or property manager would need to possess or demonstrate for you to see them as a true professional? Now, it's interesting what the results were on this. Really, really interesting. And I'm curious, before I jumped into the results, I asked John if I could quickly share them with you today. What do you think the top 3 traits are? Just take a moment to think about that. And there's a few pens and paper, which I'm always happy to see as a coach and trainer, that people are prepared to take notes to what they listen to. But just think really quickly for 10 seconds, what does your instinct tell you the top 3 traits are? I'm just going to be silent while you think about that. Is everyone getting clear in their mind what they think they could be? Because we've heard a lot about this today. So the results are, and there were about 12 to 13 common responses. So I've decided to list the bottom 6, or the top 6, sorry. At number 6 is pride in grooming. They actually want to see a very well-dressed, well-presented agent, looking neat and tidy. Number 5 was empathy. Now it's interesting, I thought that might have been slightly higher. Personally, who would thought empathy might have been up there a bit higher? Yeah, absolutely. Number 4 was relatability. This is what we've heard about this already from John McGrath and from Alex Phillips here, that it's about being authentic, it's about being real. Some of the comments were, don't make it a fake relationship, we're not mates. We're your client, don't be overly familiar, don't assume. But the top 3, and let's see how it compares to what you might have thought. At number 3, came in honesty, integrity, and being ethical. Absolutely, there was no surprises there. And equal in the response from the group that I did was number 2, which is knowledge. What the consumers want from us, and guys, there is so much in this. If you can look at this when you're out in the field, it's going to help you understand how to win their trust. But they want knowledge, market knowledge. They want industry knowledge. Believe it or not, they want a bit of property knowledge. One of the responses, I was shocked. This is legitimate. 2 weeks ago, this person went through an open home and the agent could not tell them whether it was gas or electric. I'm sorry, but if that's not the most basic of knowledge, is it any wonder that we don't be, we're not perceived as professionals and that we're not deserving of the fee we get paid? Now, if we're talking about pressure on fees, hello, that's the answer. Number 1, tell me, what is it? Number 1? Trust?
Communication, transparency.
What was your name?
My name?
Yes.
Alicia.
Alicia, can you call that out, please? Communication. What they want is excellent communication skills. Round of applause, well done. Excellent communication skills. So the reason I did this little survey was so that we would have something to measure to for the 3 things that I'm going to briefly share with you right now. How are we doing when it comes to this out in the marketplace? So let's look at what I'm seeing from the new breed coming in over the last 5 years that's positive. Absolutely seeing commitment. They're taking responsibility, agents, for themselves, for their own commitment to their success, their careers. They're not looking at anybody else to provide that for them. It's that individual responsibility. Absolute and true desire and intent to do the best that they can. They are customer service focused, and we're hearing that a lot at the moment. Would you agree that it's all about that customer service experience? And that, to me, the answer there is that number 1 response. Communicate. Keep people up to date. Return messages. Actually speak to your consumers. Knowledge. I've got wonderful agents that I'm working with at the moment. They are dedicating so much time to building their knowledge. They want to be able to fulfill that customer need to see as a professional, where they said, know what you're talking about. And finally, or not finally, sorry, second last, the personal brand. John McGrath mentioned You Inc. It's all about that. The consumers actually want to see agents who are part of the community and have some longevity in a marketplace. That builds the trust. And finally, and this is the big one in my eyes, The positive things I'm seeing about the new agents from a coach's perspective is that they are prepared for the time it's going to take to be a professional. You know that dermatologist I mentioned? 4-year medical degree, and on top of that, a 3-year residency in dermatology. Versus the skin cancer, 4-year medical degree and I think 2 or 3 week crash course on skin cancer. So why are we doing a 1-week course and then assuming that, hey, we've got it, we know everything? They're talking about the long game, these agents, and I'm absolutely loving hearing that. On the flip side, the negatives that I'm witnessing and observing. John mentioned earlier, when I heard his words, I'm seeing agents today absolutely winging it, haven't got a clue what they're doing, but they're going out trying to win business as a professional. They have illusions of their own ability. Sorry, but it's true. I had a coaching session last week with an agent who's, I guess, about 9 weeks into his career. The words out of his mouth, couldn't believe it. Caroline, I think I'm ready to go out there and start listing. Really? Really? And the scary thing is, his principal will probably let him. I'll keep going. Image over expertise is being prioritised. So they're investing money in looking good, looking sharp, driving the car, but they're not investing money in their own development, both professionally and also their personal development and their sense of maturity. They're looking at it as a quick fix job, not as a long-term professional career. And finally, I mentioned emotionally immature. Some of the behaviours that I'm seeing, both inside offices and out in the marketplace, are absolutely shocking. There are agents coming into this business who do not have the emotional maturity to have a direct conversation, to be able to handle pressure, swearing in the offices. I just don't see that as a professional, and I never will. So, we're talking about these committed agents. What are they doing? It's really simple. There are 4 key elements of where I see their focus. And, you know, as a coach and a trainer, it's music to my ears, but it's the ongoing training, week in, week out, month in, month out, year in, year out, no matter how long they've been in the business. It's the mentorship that committed agents, and by the way, just a quick one, there's a difference between being committed and being interested in something. When you're interested in something, you'll do it when it's, you know, convenient. When you are committed to something, no matter what it takes, you'll accept no excuses and you will only seek the results. And that's what I see happening out there for our high-level elite performers. They're looking for mentorship within real estate and outside of real estate, to learn how to be better business people, to learn how to be better leaders, how to communicate. You need to learn these skills. It is a skill set. Almost every one of the top performers in the industry has a coach, whether it's a real estate coach, a life coach, a mindset coach, somebody to support you to be able to be as incredible as you know in your heart you want to be. And finally, and this is possibly the biggest one, the preparedness to sacrifice feeling good over being good and doing good. You know, this is the ego part that comes into play. And what I'm seeing from these committed agents who are exceptional at what they're doing, they're putting in the work and the effort that it takes. Hard work and effort. Some of my coaching sessions are at 7 a.m. in the morning because an agent knows that for them to be able to do what they need to do that day, they've got to get up and get ahead of the curve. And to me, I don't really want to do a 7 a.m. coaching session. However, I see that intention is well worth supporting, and I will. So the final thing to look at here is, where are the gaps? From a coach's perspective, what do I feel the gaps are that we need to really focus on to make this vision, this movement a reality? I feel there are four things we've got to look at. The first thing, I believe we need a more structured pathway to learning and development. Now, I'll be the first to admit there's incredible content available out there in the marketplace. There are better trainers and coaches right now than ever before. But the missing link that I see is that it's quite ad hoc. So there's no structured learning linear pathway to be able to develop, especially for young agents in their first 12 to 18 months. And there are gaps and there are holes, and therefore it's not coming together. I also feel that we need to understand and develop how to test and assess the core competencies on a more regular basis. I'm still stunned when I get calls from agents who've been in the business for a while and they say, oh, look, we've got this auction on the weekend. one of my best purchasers only wants to pay a 5% deposit. What do I write on the front of the contract? Is it the 10%? Is it the 5%? I mean, come on. That is a basic core competency. And I would suggest that that agent's principal doesn't know that that agent doesn't know what to write. So how do we assess and test this on a more regular basis to ensure that we know exactly what we're doing? That's how to be professional. A code of conduct and standards. Now, I know this might be scary because this is about setting some benchmarks that you can actually be measured against. How would that be? Talk about weeding out the best from the weakest. I mean, who's up for that? If you're in this room, do you want to be the best? A code of conduct, standard of ethics would be incredible, in my opinion. And the fourth area, and Ewan Morton, this will speak your language, is all about leadership. I really understand, I love how passionate Ewan is about leadership, and the things he's doing within his business on leadership is incredible. Really, it's speaking my language 100%. But the leadership part of this is key. Because sometimes it doesn't matter what I do with an agent that I'm coaching. Often it all completely unravels because the leadership doesn't support this approach. And therein lies a really scary problem. So what I believe we need to do, and in the coaching and training space, is help support leaders be better leaders. How do we do that? Again, in a structured, thorough, deep, layered, many-level fashion. Does that make sense? So to sum up, the way forward here, I believe we absolutely have to create an industry body. We have to have, similar to, certified practicing accountants, CPAs, the Bar Association. Even you look at the Master Builders Association with their gold licensing scheme and what that gives to the consumers, because an industry body will create a whole lot more visibility to the consumer. They will then know what we've had to do to become part of that association. And has anybody heard of the NAR in the US? Yeah, National Association of Realtors. That was created so that when you carry that logo, you're automatically elevated as being a professional in the business. So for me, that's exactly where it's got to go. The consumer assurance that will come with that is what is lacking right now. We give them that consumer assurance through that body. All of a sudden they're feeling a lot more certainty and safety in our hands. And they won't want to go to the cheaper and riskier alternatives. I definitely feel we need a CPD overhaul. I was scared earlier to see if there are any RTOs in the room. Don't think there are. Anybody here from RTO? Oh, of course, yes. But like Brian Cannon, yeah. The CPD overhaul, the reason I'm talking about that is my mother-in-law is a barrister. And it's interesting because I was talking to her about this, and I said, how many CPD points do you have to do to be a member of the Bar Association? She said 10. I'm like, oh my God, we have to do more than that. We must, we're doing pretty well. The difference being, they get 1 CPD point per hour of learning. We can go to a 4-hour session and get the whole 12. There is the issue. Can you see that? So it might sound like a lot of extra work, guys, but at the end of the day, this is where it's all underpinned by the likes of me and other coaches and trainers in this industry. We have to change what we do. We've got to up the stakes so that you guys get the benefit, because the industry as a whole will reap the rewards well into the future. And I don't know about you, but it's interesting because I'm very passionate about this, and I'm really keen to work as closely with REIA and REINSW as I can, because I went on a ski trip a couple of weeks ago. Spent the whole time in bed with the flu, but don't worry about that. And the thing is, I got to know, in a lodge there's 30, 40 people, and inevitably you get to the point during the week where you'll catch up with somebody you haven't really spoken to, and around the dinner table they say, so Caroline, what do you do? And in that instant, in that moment, there's a hesitation, because right there, I feel I'm about to be judged. I feel that. I don't know, does that ring true to anybody in the room? Yes, absolutely. And I can assure you, I long for the day that when I get asked that question, I don't have to hesitate, because there will be a sense of pride, respect, and hopefully even a little bit of admiration when I say that I'm part of the real estate industry. And I hope you all feel exactly the same. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Caroline.
Thank you.
Absolutely outstanding. and just love the framework for this as we move from an industry to a true profession.
Brilliant.
So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Round of applause for Caroline. So we've covered a fair bit if you actually think of the range of professions, or the range of presentations we've just had. Firstly from John Cunningham, why do we need to do this? What is it all about? Hearing from John McGrath, then Alexander, and then finally Caroline. So what I'd love you to do now is just jump into groups, and could you just turn the person to the left and right, and are you happy to be in a group with them? Just firstly, question. You're not sure? Okay. All right. So it's time to have a brief discussion, so you can move your chairs in. Probably 3s or 4s would be great. What are the key takeaways? Just one more moment before you jump into conversation. Thank you. One more moment before you jump into conversation. What were your key takeaways that are relevant for you and importantly relevant for the real estate profession coming out of what we've covered so far today? Then we've got one more session and we're having an afternoon tea break. Fantastic. Thank you. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much. So someone from this side of the room, would you like to share one insight or one key takeaway that you've gained out of the session so far today? Only one person, not all of you. It's not an auction. You're not buying anything. You're just literally asking the client more questions what they want. Yeah. So really stepping into their shoes brilliantly well. Excellent. And key takeaway?
I think that just professionalism is going to protect the whole industry.
Yeah.
This initiative is obviously something that's good for the consumer, but also good for our reputation as well as the whole industry.
Yeah, absolutely. Interesting. At the back, I wrote down step up or step out. And I just think that that's the mode. It's sort of a choice point that well, you can go either way. It's a step up to a new level that is going to be good for client, but absolutely also great for the profession from a long-term point of view. Excellent. We have a very interesting panel to introduce to you right now, and I'd like to bring all of the panelists up the front. We'll give them a round of applause after I've actually mentioned all their names.
Slight change in program. That name's replacing the other name. We've got someone sick.
Thank you very much. That's called just-in-time coaching. Yes. Can we bring up to the panel? Firstly, Will Phillips. We're going to applaud these guys, aren't we? Yeah. Andrew Lutzy. Lynette Malcolm. Lynette, thank you. And Jesse Davidson. And finally, Susie Reid. Welcome. Now all of you have got amazing track records in terms of what you're achieving from either a sales or a property management point of view. And you're really demonstrating the new breed of real estate professional who is committed to making a difference and getting out there to the marketplace. So I've got a few questions to run through, and then we'll see how we're going time-wise. I'm getting lots of time coaching from the REI team, so they're doing very, very well on that front to keep us on track well and truly. Andrew Lutzy has got a microphone in his hand, so obviously that's a sign that you want to go first, Andrew. So well done. What do you think the industry needs to do to change its perception to the public?
I think we've heard a lot today about the consumer experience, and I think that probably once an agent understands that really is the pinnacle of what we do. It's their experience, whether it's buying, selling, leasing, once an agent can fully grasp that, okay, we're in a customer service-based industry, then I think we'll start to make inroads. But it does start from the top. It starts with leadership. And we were talking before about everyone on board and on the team recognising that the leaders need to really provide, a platform and a set of standards and belief structure within the team so that they understand that this is important to the consumers.
Yeah. So it needs to be on the agenda for meetings. It needs to be, on the radar in discussions and so on. Lynette, from your point of view?
I think we need to really reevaluate from a top-down approach. So that leadership component of what Caroline spoke about earlier, I think is really integral to how we shift forward. We all know where the pressure points are in the industry. We all know what we do and we don't do well, but there's a lack of consistency. And I think there's also a real lack of a vision around where we want to go. I know there's a lot of agents that would like to do things better and change, but I think there's a lack of framework that they can work towards. And I think that reassessment and ongoing training of what we do as agents is really important. We want to be a professional, we want to be recognised, and we want to have the consumer see us as that, but we need to have those steps in play to actually formalise that process.
Yeah. So, and that's a lot of the work that REI New South Wales is doing right now to communicate that through. But as John McGrath said, if each of us take on board that we're a pebble in the pond, and we have a ripple effect within. So yeah, there's the role of leaders, and then there are leaders without the title of leader, and making a difference with that. Bill?
Thanks, Michael. Look, I think interestingly today, not many people have mentioned buyers. If you look at a transaction, you've got one vendor and you've got 50 buyers, and I find it, I guess, in our business, that's something that we've pretty much only focused on. I mean, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about consumers. So if you consider the average transaction, you've got 50 buyers on average and one seller. So for me, in terms of where we need to go, there needs to be a mind shift. Stop thinking about the agent, yourself, and to start focusing on buyers, which in a funny way actually helps the seller. We spent a lot of time, for example, talking about pain points of buyers, and I don't think we're being very honest about how we actually address those. So price guides, how even displaying the price guide, then how accurate it is, advertising the price, advertising the strata levies, document downloading, free due diligence or whatever it is. The negotiation, transparency, how do we deal with that? If you consider, for a buyer, there's so many pain points they go through in a transaction.
Absolutely.
So as an industry, if we can't address those, then I don't think really anything's going to change.
Yeah. It's interesting. One of the things I say from a coaching point of view is the service we offer the buyers is ultimately the service we're offering the vendors. Or flip that around into property management speak, the service we're offering the tenants is ultimately the service we're offering the landlords.
Yeah, I think if you consider the modern consumerism, if you're a consumer today, it's easy to buy something. It's so easy.
Yeah.
Online, cars, products, whatever it is, real estate is impossible. It's so hard to buy. So we need to change that.
Yeah, and what Caroline said is really important. Pre-Uber coming along, we had to use a taxi. Now there's an alternative with that, and that choosing to wanting to use us as opposed to having to use us for that process. So important. And Jesse?
I'd agree with Lynette as well, and leadership's probably the big thing for me. I think I recently was judging myself. We brought a new young guy on in our business. We're an auctioneering business, so we're not nearly as big as some of yours. Brought him on straight out of school, and I think I was caught up a little bit expecting him to know things a little bit more than he should. Probably just sending him off on tasks without sort of correctly explaining how to do that task. So for me, I couldn't agree more. Leadership is so important. And also I think making it cool to be ethical. And I know that sounds a bit silly, but making it a cool thing to be ethical and following the rules, because the junior agents that are joining your agencies and looking up to the senior agents in your offices, they follow everything that you do. Whether you believe they do or don't, they do. I can look at the same things as my mentor. I've fallen into the same traps, I suppose, that he does from time to time. But I'm very proud of that too, to a certain degree, because I think he's right up the top of the ethical train.
Yeah, fantastic. Excellent. Susie?
The elder statesman.
Yeah.
Feel vaguely out of place.
We're doing a great job of increasing the average age for the group up the front here. Yes. Yeah.
So quite apart from the fact that I'm the elderly member of this group, I bring a property management perspective to it all. And so I think the most important thing at the moment is exactly what the REI is trying to achieve. It's this level of professionalism. And unfortunately in property management land for a long time that just hasn't existed. And it happens in all kinds of ways, just by using staff that aren't trained and then not putting the work into training them. And the other thing is, I'm not quite sure whether anybody in this office is guilty of it, but I would say they probably are. There are offices where, for example, a residential property manager will also manage a portfolio of, say, 3 or 4 commercial properties. The people who are doing it have no idea what they're doing. It's such a complex thing. If you have a residential portfolio, do not manage commercial properties unless you've got a proper commercial manager. There are all sorts of complexities to property management in the residential and the commercial world, and the staff that are operating in that space a lot of the time just aren't trained properly. So I think the REI does a great job with their training because they provide professional, proper, high-level training, and too many property management staff are just chasing the cheapest CPD points that they can get just so that they can tick the box, and that's what we've really got to change.
And fantastic point. On this, around should there be a greater recognition for specialist areas such as auctioneers or buyers agents or the commercial property management and so on? So there's a real drive towards those particular areas of the business.
I think that's absolutely the way we should be going, because these are very different areas of expertise. You can't be all things to all people. Decide what you want to be and then do it really well, and leave the other bits for somebody else to do well.
Jesse, what's your view on that? Do you want me to repeat the question?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah. I can just see.
I don't see. Yeah. I was looking up the names.
Yeah.
Ask again. I'll have another question. Yeah.
Sure, I'll ask you again.
I got the attention span of a gnat. Go on.
So should there be more recognition for the various aspects? So I think sometimes it's sort of the flavour is agent.
Yep.
Versus auctioneer versus property manager, commercial property manager, residential.
In short, yes. In terms of the auctioneering industry, it's funny. The standard auctioneer 30 years ago was one that sort of came out of the stock industry. I'm a country guy, so I grew up in the stockyards when I was a kid. The change, I suppose, over the last 10 or 15 years has been that an auctioneer is no longer a stock auctioneer. Property auctioneering in itself is its own art. The same way it is to sell real estate and the same way it is to lease real estate. Your point on leasing commercial property, to have people that have no experience specifically around that is unforgivable, if you ask me. So from my perspective, yes, absolutely. I think it is important that we have different sectors and everybody understands their role in the transaction.
Within that, yeah. Is that pretty much how you guys see it as well? Yeah. So yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, like a lawyer, for example, there's specialist conveyancing, then there's a criminal lawyer, then you've got family law, and all these different multifacets. The same thing with branded as an agent.
Yes.
I think.
And why did you come up with criminal lawyer as your second point?
It's a heavy night last night.
So Andrew, you've got the microphone there. In terms of non-negotiables, as a team, do you guys have a set of service standards or must-dos that exist across?
Yeah, definitely. And speaking purely from a sales perspective, there's it all starts with that very first phone call and what experience that seller or the buyer will have, particularly on the selling side, obviously, because that's the remuneration. But certain, tick points, and you wonder why you lose business and win business against other agents who told a better story. Yeah, that's a big part of it. But it's also those little milestones and those little moments where you did more than your competitor. You out-serviced them by providing a better level of service. And Alex talked before about having really good data, having really relevant information, having the knowledge, and I think that's something that we can start with the non-negotiable, which we're training our team, but you have to know, if you want to service a farm area, you have to know everything about that farm area, the community, the schools, the bus routes, exactly just the different intricacies, the architecture that goes with it. And a lot of people don't have any idea about architecture. They don't have any idea about building codes that change. So those sort of non-negotiable things, if you're going to sell this product, you need to know everything about the product.
And what that means, not only for the team member, but also for clients, the level of confidence that they can have in you and in that conversation goes up a notch or two. Will?
Yeah, we've got the standards that we've set up. I think a lot of you guys would probably know, but price guides are mandatory. And we implemented that 3 years ago, and it was a tough change. Agents, we're very process driven. We do the same thing day in, day out. So for us to sit there in front of 40 agents and say you have to put a price guide on, that was tough. It was actually really hard. But
was it a fun meeting, that one? It
was really fun. But now when we look back, we call ourselves crazy for not doing it. So firstly, it developed better skills. You had to be a better agent. You had to know your stuff more. The idea of replying to 40 inquiries a week on properties is insane. We do free building and pest inspections for every buyer, or a free strata report. So the idea of doing 4 or 5 of those a week for different buyers is madness. Even things like our photography, we've ruled out anything fake, any photoshopping at all. What we're trying to do is build trust, because we're all talking about trust. So we're trying to build trust with the consumer. And funnily enough, and we've still got a lot of work to go. There's heaps that we could do, but because we implemented these things a few years ago, I can sit in front of a seller now and say, we do this, this and this. How did you find your experience as a buyer? And they say, why doesn't everyone else do that? And we get listings because we're doing things that no one else is doing.
Yeah,
and this is the opportunity we all have, is to actually have the courage to try and do things that are better for the consumer, and you actually get rewards back.
Yeah.
So in terms of standards, we've got some, but I'm sure we could do more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what's interesting, Will, you're living something that I'm massively big on at the moment, and that is focus on trust, and the transactions will follow. So how do you actually build that and make that process not seamless but much easier?
Yeah.
As someone navigates on the journey.
Yeah, it has, and it has other positives as well in terms of I guess recruitment. People want to actually work somewhere where we're doing something that's isn't untrustworthy. They want to work somewhere and they want to be trained the right way. So yeah, it's good.
Yeah, great. Lynette?
Yeah, it's very much for our agency, we have a visions and values sort of standpoint that we take, and we expect that our staff and our agents follow that pathway. We've also designed the customer journey, and we've taken a lot of effort to go through and actually look at, okay, from the consumer's point of view, how are they going to interact with our agency? And from the first touch point, or phone call into the office or open home, how we expect our agents to deal with that client, and what that journey looks like for them, and the touch points, and really that focus on transparency and communication. So if a client comes to us, there's usually a reason and there's a need there. So to fulfill that need, it's not just haphazard in terms of how we then deliver a response. It's actually a plan around what the expectations are and the process the agents can follow, because at the end of the day, when everyone gets busy, the checklists go out the window. So what we've tried to design is, okay, well, here's perfection, here's what we'd really like, and do your best each time to get as close to that as you can.
Yeah, and you're training to that customer journey.
Absolutely, and I recently put on a new PA, and she'd come from another agency, a very good agency, and had really good sort of grounding. But when she came to me, I had a roadmap of checklists and expectations for her. And what I did every morning was train for 15 minutes around one of them. But at the end of the week, I actually tested her on each of the elements. So, what does a perfect open home look like? What do I expect you to do? I don't expect you to be looking at your phone when there's a customer walking up to the door. We think they're basics because we've got learnt behaviour from, for example, I started with a very successful agent, so I've got learnt behaviours that's just not on. Yep. But, you walk into an open home that's quiet and you've got an agent sitting on the couch and you're like, Hi.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Don't get me started on open homes. Whatever you do. But yeah, there's no question it's the biggest public show of how great we are, or not, in that particular moment, well and truly. How did you go about doing the customer journey work? Because I think this is sort of the next thing that is happening, not just in real estate, but across the board, guys, in business. So it's how we actually develop these customer journeys to look at really well what you were talking about before. Where are those pain points, and how do we start to navigate through them?
So the starting point for us was, as an executive team, working out what we thought should be the perfect client journey.
Great.
We then workshopped it with the team, so brought it into the sales meeting and said, what do we not have in this list that some of you do that you think is valuable or effective for the consumer? And there was amazing a few little things that people do, a bunch of flowers before the first open home. Well, that's not appropriate in all circumstances, but we kind of developed a list that we think if our aim is to be industry best in terms of our level of service, do those boxes sort of, tick what that looks like? I think the next phase is to actually consult the consumer, because it's nice to think that we know what they want, but I think, what Caroline did in her survey, I think it's nice to hear from them. So that's probably the next level for us to explore.
Yeah, fantastic, great. Anything you'd like to say on that one, Susie? Because, from a property management point of view, sometimes, you're really known as the leading property management business in the eastern suburbs, well and truly. What work have you done to get those, standards in place, not only non-negotiables, but really drive that into everyone within the team?
I think the most important thing that I've tried to do with my team is to make them understand how important it is that our clients feel cared about. And that means it sounds so entry level, but it's actually really difficult in property management sometimes to do, especially when you've got a busy leasing business and lots of demands from people at both ends. And you're so focused on actually the process and getting the job done that you actually forget to stop and take the time to talk to people and talk to them and listen to them, as opposed to talk at them and just be on the run. So, for example, we don't have really, really speedy inspections on the weekend unless we really have to. Otherwise, you're opening a door, you're letting a whole lot of people run around, and then you take off and you've established no proper relationship with these people, and you've got no way to go back to them because you've got nothing to start, no sort of stepping off point. So it's actually about, for me, the most important thing we've done is actually try and bring the people into our business, and once they feel that you care, then it all flows from there. Yeah, that's my big thing.
Yeah, fantastic. So Will, from your point of view, how much learning are you actually engaging in at the moment, and what's your sort of like learning energy? Where's that focus going?
Learning in terms, well, firstly, in our business, we're doing this stuff every day. So like there's nothing more important than this sort of stuff for us. So it's in the culture, and one of the things I believe in is that if you want to improve your knowledge on a topic, then you should teach it, because that's the best way to actually learn when you're teaching someone. So I'm very involved in that. I've had 4 agents under me that have all moved out and they're successful in their own right. I've got another 4 under me now. So I guess in terms of being able to, you can have a more shotgun approach, but then a hands-on approach. And in terms of leadership, there's others in the business that do that as well. Ivan, Shannon, Adrian, Nicholas, Maclay, we're all trying to do the same thing, and hopefully that will filter down within the business.
Yeah, fantastic. Great.
Yeah, look, development for me is consistent, I suppose. With a bit of luck, I'll get to close enough to 850 or 900 auctions, I think, this year. And doing those sort of numbers, I think you're consistently learning. I'm consistently seeing things that I haven't seen. From my perspective, I sit in on nearly every auction that our business does, if I'm not doing it except on Saturdays. So I think, before I called an auction, I think I'd probably watched about 2,500 or 3,000 auctions. So I felt that I had a good understanding. So for me, I do a hell of a lot of stuff with the REI, just consistent webinars to keep myself educated, and also the fact that I'm just consistently watching what we do in our business is also what my competitors do and what I really like about what they do.
Yeah, fantastic. from a property management point of view, the learning and development side of things?
We have a weekly meeting, as I think everybody does, and we try to go. I try to impart something meaningful to my staff each week. I don't think we do as much training honestly as we should. It's hard because it's a busy world, property management. People run all day, and it can be difficult to get them motivated for training. So I can honestly say that is one thing that I think in my office I need to do some more work on. So, mea culpa.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And Andrew? Training?
Well, we've got John, so makes it a lot easier. That's pretty much it. Yeah. No, we run weekly mastermind training sessions, so that's a difference between skills-based and then knowledge-based as well. So we'll mix that up. A lot of contract law stuff and agency agreements. A lot of the guys just, again, it's kind of like what you said before. That you take it as that this is best practice, because that's how I learned from John. And almost 2/3 of the guys still don't understand agency agreements, just simple basic stuff. So it's constantly going through that stuff. And really focus on, are we doing a skills-based training session as a dialogue, or is it actually hands-on? This is technical knowledge you need to know, which again, we just take for granted. But if we're moving to professionalism, maybe there's a better platform.
Yeah, fantastic. And Lynette, for you?
I think one of the best things about our industry is that we aren't really direct competitors. A lot of us are in smaller industries, but in terms of learning and development, it's amazing if you ask a question or ask a favour of someone. So inter offices, inter companies, inter franchises, we have guest speakers that come in and train, and it's amazing if you ask for something or some help or some training from someone, how freely it's given. We train our agents. We have a trainer that comes in terms of coaching and growing their business. We have people that we invite in to speak to them about different elements of compliance. We've voluntarily overhauled and had ourselves assessed on that front, which I think everyone should do before the Office of Fair Trading comes in and actually does it formally. But I also think in terms of learning and development, I personally have a really big interest in the industry, and I've asked to go overseas a couple of times with some of the bigger agents in New York, for example. I went over and spent some time with Sean Osher at Core Real Estate. He set up a week for me to actually go and meet with all of the heads of departments and explore what questions I had in terms of how they do things differently to us. And I think it's a pretty exciting world out there, and I think in terms of learning, yes, there's compliance and regulation, and we definitely need to focus on that because it's the building blocks of us getting towards being professional. But I think in terms of what agencies and companies and agents themselves can do and ask for, it's really exciting. There's so much on offer.
Yeah, fantastic, excellent. And I think this is a really important point. So often I see either within a group or within an office, there could be someone sitting 2 cubicles away that's got the expertise that you need. What are you doing to share that? And the challenge can be that if I don't know and I'm educating you on something that I am not really have got the basis for, there's just no way that we're going to drive to a profession. It will be an ad hoc to ad hoc to ad hoc coming through. Fantastic. So, Jesse, any final comment you'd like to make or contribute to today?
Look, I'm really excited. I'm pretty young, south of 30 still. So for me, looking at everything that the REI is looking to do, I'm really excited about it. I'm a little bit the same. It's never overly excited to tell people what I do. So I'm really excited about it. I think that the REI is on the right track, and yeah, looking forward to being part of it. Really, that's about all I can say, I think.
Yeah, fantastic. Will? And you need to actually say your age because you're number one under 30. How much long? 22.
Yeah, I've got 8 years to go.
Yeah, 22.
31.
Okay.
I'm 31.
Oh, so
I'm
yeah,
past
that's out of the game plan.
Clutching onto that.
You're still holding on.
I'm not going to take over Alex.
Yeah.
So I'm screwed.
Well, let me just check your profile online. Look, you're 28. Who would have thought? Yeah.
Look, nothing additional. I just appreciate you inviting me up and thanks to John. I mean, it's great that you're doing it. I'm sure we can make some headway. So we just got to keep plugging away at it.
Yeah, great.
Absolutely. I think it's truly inspiring that we have someone that in John that's been so passionate about creating a direction and setting the building blocks really to get us there. And I think today's people that are here, it's really a show that we all aspire to be, the one that is there offering, as Alexander Phillips said, being the advisor. And I think if we can get to that standpoint, I think it'll change a lot in the industry.
Yeah, excellent, very good.
Yeah, much the same. It pretty much had to happen. I think a lot of this business, it was self-cannibalisation. A lot of the time we can be our own worst enemy. So it's obviously John's a great leader, and I think that starts at the top of everyone. So it's hard to not spread the word. We really want to spread the word and get it out there, get some momentum behind it, and then the low-hanging fruit, that'll drop away. And some of these guys just won't survive. So it can only clean up the industry for the better.
Yeah, excellent. And Susie, for you? Any final comments?
Ask me how old I am and I'm going to leave the room.
Yeah, notice that wasn't on my list to ask you. Yeah.
You know what, I think what we can do is we can kind of think about how things aren't as good as they should be now, but what I can do is maybe just throw a little humorous perspective into the fact that we have come a really long way. Because when I first came into this industry, one of my competing agents used to deal with a tenant who was in arrears by actually physically removing the front door. Seriously, there were no rules. And as
the good old days, a couple of people say here. Yeah, I just want to get those front doors off now.
There was the age of putting super glue into a lock. I mean, seriously, there were agents who did that. So I think a lot of these rules that we've got now, what was being said before is actually true. These are extreme examples. But a lot of the stuff that is actually happening now is happening as a result in people's attitudes is because of our own poor behaviours. So I think what has really, really changed for the better is that now there's a room full of people here who want to actually behave well and be professional. And that is a quantum leap from the way things used to be.
Absolutely.
So it's not all bad guys, it really isn't.
Yeah, and definitely long gamers. Yeah, in for the long game to really make a difference.
Yeah, property managers, for example. I mean, property managers were just salespeople in waiting. So you never went into property management as a career. It wasn't a profession. It wasn't something to be proud of. You were just a property manager and you were waiting for the day when you were going to become a salesperson. Now there are two specific streams, and this is also a career, and I've got what I consider to be a very successful business with a very high-end property management business. So, and we're very professional the way we work. So there have been huge improvements, and it's just great now that what we're doing is just doing that extra bit, which is going to change things completely.
Yeah, fantastic. Let's give our panellists a round of applause. Thank you so much. So, Mr. Cunningham, my mum talks about the first 25 years of life is about yourself, the second 25 years of life is about family, and the third 25 years of life is about giving back to whatever field of endeavour you're actually committed to and making a difference. What's really neat around what we're hearing so far is the level of appreciation that everyone has to you and the direction that the REI New South Wales is actually stepping up to another level and the impact that's going to have. Now, you have sat on those chairs for a significant period of time, well and truly. I think it's time to give Mr. John Cunningham a round of applause for that huge effort. And to give those butts a little bit of freedom, and we'll have a well-deserved afternoon tea break, do some networking, and we're back here at 3 o'clock. So let's zoom back into the session this afternoon. Have you enjoyed this afternoon so far? Yes. Yeah. It's really interesting that when you connect with great people and like-mindedness who are committed to not just individually achieve great results, but also make a difference to the entire profession. It really is about, how do we drive this message in a way that people and not doing it because they have to, but doing it because they want to, and are really committed to making that difference. And someone who has been doing this ever since the first day I met him when I walked into McGrath, I don't know how many years ago that was, is none other than Shannon Whitney. Let's welcome him up.
Thank you, Michael. Am I on?
You are.
That was
Thanks,
1994.
Seriously, was
Yep.
it really? Step back in
1994.
time, baby.
There was sort of 10 of us, I think, at the time.
Yeah, there was. Yeah.
It was a great group.
Absolutely.
A long time ago. Anyway, here we are in 2017. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for having me. You may sort of wonder why I would wear a shirt like this to a professional standards thing, and I'm sure, John, you weren't pleased to see me when I turned up like this.
I would have been disappointed, Shannon.
Would you? Well, so this is a Dries Van Noten Flowers shirt, and this is actually just the way I dress, so that's why I decided to wear it today. It isn't any sort of symbol, or it doesn't have any sort of meaning, but I guess in terms of professional standards, which is what we're talking about today, to me the outside skin is sort of irrelevant. Professional standards really starts here, at your heart, and is your head. So I think what's on the external, outside, exterior, your skin, if you like, that's really irrelevant. It's what's inside and what's important to you. And I know from my point of view, this is just the way I dress. I like to dress this way. I'm not trying to send any sort of message, but regardless of what I wear on the outside, even back to 1995 to where I am today, professional standard is not a thing that you do, it is what you are. And I think that, it's very admirable, and, everyone's thanked John very much for what he's done. And it's really important because we've got to this point as an industry for very good reason. And today is sort of mostly about the younger generation. So I think that, and I know some of you, not all of you, we thank you very much for turning up today because, today, or this point in time in the future, heavily relies on what you choose to do and what you choose not to do. And unfortunately, the legacy of what you've got today has probably nothing to do with you. It's got a lot to do with us. But it is what it is, and you're going to have to deal with it. But I think that what's important that you take away from the future is don't make the same mistakes that we've made. And that's in your hands, and it's up to you to do something about that because we can't change what we haven't done, can't go back and change that, but we can certainly consider what we're going to do today and into the future. So, John always likes me to talk about this agent of the future stuff, and I'm probably not the right person to talk to because you listen to people like Alexander Phillips and Will Phillips, people like Dib Chidiac and various others. They're really the agent of the future. But I guess in terms of this concept, it's something that is very important, both from a business point of view and also from an industry point of view. So if I look at, say, yesterday, if I use yesterday as an example, guy walks into our boardroom in Darlinghurst. He's there to meet one of my colleagues, Nick Krasenstein, I think. He's there to sign an agency agreement. We've agreed to, handle the business, and he turns up and he says, "Oh, Nick, I've got something to tell you." Before we kind of go down this path, because they've obviously gone through the whole kind of submission thing and they've agreed and all that sort of stuff. Slight problem. I've got another offer. There's another proposal. Okay, what's that? Okay, so I can get 0.06% and they'll pay half the advertising. So who thinks that's an anomaly? Who thinks that's some sort of random event? No. No, that ain't a random event. And I think it's really important because, when we come together as an industry, we start to talk about these things and we don't put on the table the important things. And I can tell you that ain't a random event. And there would be not one brand in this place that hasn't participated and been at that sort of point where they've had to, through no other reason from desperation, said, I want the business. That includes Bresic Whitney. Now, that's really important because as a business owner, whenever I hear that and see that, I love it. I actually love it. And I can tell you, that ain't a random event. That happens every day. And what's not right is the industry suggesting, oh yeah, that's just the lower grade agents. No, it's not. That's not the lower grade agents. That's everybody. And I say that because I'm not sitting in some boardroom in an ivory tower. I'm in lounge rooms doing listings like you. And I started doing them in 1995 and I'm still doing them today. And that is not an anomaly. That's actually pretty close to being quite normal. You know, you can jump around on the numbers from 0.06 to 0.08 or whatever you want, but they're the numbers. In 2010, I remember saying to my team, which was a smaller team at the time, I remember saying to them, when I think about that, I'm concerned. And I remember saying in 2010, I would have to say, from what I experienced in the past, I reckon in 2020, the average fee for service will be 1% in Sydney. I think it was, well, you were there, Willie? And I didn't sort of just come out with some random statement. I'd sort of, you know, from an agent's point of view in terms of what I was experiencing and what I was seeing in terms of the customer engagement, the behaviour of agents, and also what agents had not changed, pretty likely event. Now we fast forward to 2017, and I go back, I can tell you what, I was laughed at for a long time. That's Shannon going on that rant again. Yeah, right. I reckon I'm going to be close. I actually reckon I'll be pretty close. Now it's only 3 years away, but the acceleration rate of the decline in fee for service has been serious and significant. Serious and significant. So, what's the greatest challenge for agents and agencies into the future? What is the single greatest challenge that you guys have as agents, or you have as agencies, businesses, brands, that you have into the future? Forget about technology, forget about practices, forget about all that stuff. The single greatest challenge you have is the decline in fee for service. The decline in fee for service. And some of you have only been doing this for maybe 3 or 4 years. Some of us like us have been doing it for 20 years. We literally could walk into a house drunk, trip over the front door, probably look like me, and you'd still get it at 2.2%. Because the next bloke wouldn't be much better, or the third person forgot to turn up. We still thought we were pretty good, and we would get paid a lot of money. That's the greatest challenge you guys have going forward. And I put that on the table. I put that on the table, and this is really, really important. It's not about someone doing it for 0.06%. It's not about someone who decides to hand in half the advertising. We all get kind of caught up in, oh, this bloke did this and she did that and he did. Who cares? They're doing it. And if they're doing it, it's impacting you. If it's your colleague in your business, it's impacting you. If it's your brand and someone's doing it in 3 suburbs away, it's impacting you. You don't think it is, but it is. And you have to accept it. Because if you don't accept it and you don't say, hey, is this a problem? Damn right it's a problem. It's a big problem. And unless you're prepared to look that in the face, You cannot come up with a solution. Because right now the real estate industry runs around with their head chopped off. Oh, this is not a problem. I don't do this, I don't do that. They do. You do. We all do. We've got to accept it. Ah. I did. And it's funny because, sorry about that. John, what's the greatest challenge that the real estate industry has today? Why are we here today? Professional standards are terrible. Because if they were good, we wouldn't have to do this. And in 22 years, we've never done this before, right? Never done this before. And I can tell you, this is, and John would be probably one of the most honest individuals I've met in this industry. This is by far the biggest challenge that we have as an industry. By far. And I said at the beginning, this is not actually anyone's fault here. A lot of it is what's happened in the past and what wasn't dealt with in the past. And we have to actually think about what we can do in the future. But I don't think that we can actually go forward if we don't stare in the face. Why is 0.06% or why is 0.08% a problem? Because if it's not a problem, let's just put it on the table and say it's not a problem. But I'm saying it's a problem is because I'm in business and I'm an agent, and I can tell you it is a problem. Because you cannot invest and develop in people if you do not make profit. Can't. And right now, we're not competing with the next bloke who turns up and the next girl who turns up who wants to be a real estate agent. We're competing with tech companies. And I can tell you, they got a ton of money to invest in. A ton of it. So we have to be absolutely realistic about this, because fee for service or value for service is a very important component. So that's the challenge for the industry, is professional standards. That's the challenge for agents. And probably now, from what I observe and what I can see, I think now we're starting to see that there is a connection to those two things. There is a connection. Now that's really important, because to observe and understand what we've done wrong or what we've failed to do over the past 5 years, 10 years, 20 years should suggest to us we can't keep doing it. Because if you keep doing the same thing to get the same outcome and you don't change, what happens? The same outcome. Not a real estate problem, and it doesn't require a real estate solution. That's fundamentally how we have to deal with issues and how we have to find solutions. So I think that's really important, because at the moment what I see is I see that and I see a need for that, and people don't necessarily make the connection that for us to redefine being professional and delivering a service to a consumer will actually translate to value for service. The reason why is, if we were doing a good job, the fee for service would go which way? Up. So you can't sit here and say we're doing a good job when the fee for service is going down. And it is going down. And that analogy I gave you was not a random event. That happens in every part of Sydney. And I feel sorry for them, because the agents actually don't know what to do. If someone is there and they're going to do it at 1.5%, how do you then beat them? Most of them haven't had any training around that. They'll simply say, well, I need to beat them, I need to get the price lower. And the next guy comes in and I'll do it lower. And I know that because when I sit in lounge rooms when the tension's on, it goes straight through the floor. because we're all doing the same thing. We're all offering the same sort of value. So when you think about the agent of the future, if I had to predict, or I had to summarise or recommend what I think the agent of the future looks like, I don't think it's necessarily going to be a human being, and I don't think it's going to be someone I can sort of pull out and say, quick, let's get Alexander Phillips up here, or let's get Will Phillips up here, and this is them, because that ain't the answer. They're only one person. We've got to work out, how do you reverse the trend? It's got to start by there. And starting there means if you keep doing the same thing that is enforcing fees down, don't keep doing it. Don't keep doing it. So if we want to go out there and we want to continue to behave in a way that is completely unsatisfactory to a consumer, that's not going to succeed in reversing the trend. So I guess when I think about the agent of the future, it's pretty difficult for me to sit here and unpack that so you can walk away and go, right, I know what that's going to be. Because I can tell you, I don't actually know the answer. I don't know the answer. Where we spend our time is looking at how we're going to do it. How are we going to reverse the trend? We can't change the past, but I can tell you, as a business and as people who work in our business, we don't want them going in and saying, oh shit, I'm going to have to do this at 0.08%. I'm going to have to do this and I'm going to have to kick in half the marketing. We don't want our people there. We want our people armed with a really robust, strong value proposition. That's what we want. We may not get the listing, and we're going to have to do that because we need to rebuild trust. And Will Phillips said it very succinctly before. It's got nothing to do with vendors. Nothing. Vendors are actually the least of our concern. The least. They don't even rate. What we have done, or what we have failed to do, is build trust. We have failed miserably. And I say that because you guys in the under 30s, it's not your fault. It's not. But we have to look at that, because if the fee for service continues to go down, and as we continually read that every month in the OFTs across all industries, the businesses that are the most complained and have the highest level of dissatisfaction from consumers, who is the greatest, which industry has the greatest amount of participants in the top 10? Real estate. Who thinks that's a problem? I do. Absolutely I do. That is a monumental problem. And we have to deal with it. And unfortunately, the under 30s, you've got to deal with this. Because I can tell you, if you do not deal with this, that fee is going so far below 1%, it'll knock your socks off. And it's going to happen so fast. It will. Trust me, I've been doing this for a long time. And the trend is there. And I'm not saying this to scare you. I'm saying this because this is a reality. And I know some of you sit there going, yeah, that's bullshit. You know, I can get it. I can get 1.8. I can do that. That's fine if you can get it, but you're one individual. You're one individual. There are hundreds of thousands of consumers that we deal with every day, and their level of satisfaction is very low. And what we don't make the connection with is our ability to deliver service and satisfaction is impacting the ability of us to deliver service to people that need us. That's what's happening. But yet, we keep on coming back and coming back and coming back, and we keep forgetting and forgetting and forgetting about consumers. to Will Phillips's point earlier. The industry still has yet to work out that if you provide a published price guide, the customer does not have to contact you, because the customer does not want to contact you. The customer doesn't like you, because you have done nothing to build trust. So why do you not start dealing with this? All they want is the price. Please give it to them. Why do you not? Is it that difficult? Is it? I don't think it's that hard. Well, we sit here and talk about it, and we walk away, and what do? Nothing. We do nothing. But we still yet to make this connection. We still yet to make this connection between standards of professionalism and fee for service. The two are intrinsically linked. And perhaps it might be an interpretation of what trust is. Trust is understanding the buyer's pain points and delivering a solution. What's the biggest pain point that every buyer has when they're trying to buy a house? Trying to get the price. What happens, and the word is transparency, what is giving a price guide an example of? Being transparent. All you're doing is being transparent. If you can't make that leap and make that journey between understanding or coming up with an assessed value of a property and then learning to be able to deliver that to a buyer today how they want to be communicated to, you probably are not going to be an agent in the future. That's my expectation. That's my suggestion. And the reason why I say this, if we can't get that bit right, what are we going to do when something really complex happens? Shit, that's a worry. Because this ain't difficult. But we've got to stop dancing around the top, and we're going to start bringing out the real issues, and we're either going to have to deal with them, or we're perhaps going to have to get out of the way and let someone else deal with them. Because I can tell you someone else will deal with them. Because they understand this concept about building trust to customers. Every successful organisation across the industry today is dealing with that very thing. And that's what we're going to start to deal with. And I'm just using that as an example because the price is the gateway to everything. You start giving them the price, everything else gets easier from that point. But I say that too is because what I see today in 2017, we weren't giving the price in 1995, Michael, and I can tell you the industry aren't giving it to them today. And has the consumer expectation changed in 27 years? Absolutely it has. Absolutely it has. So there isn't an issue there, and I don't think the issue's with the customer. Issues with us. Issues with us. Perhaps this is where the blockage is. Perhaps. What sits above all these things is culture. Successful businesses, culture. That's where it starts. Successful institutions, culture is where it starts. Culture enables limits or blocks. It's kind of invisible. You can't see it. But I've been in this industry for, 27 years. And if I had to kind of break it down into, words that, we can understand, what's the time then? Oh, shit. This is the ethos of the industry. This is the ethos. Vendor domination. When I say vendor domination, every single little thing that an agent does, that a sales team, a business, a brand does, all comes down from vendors. The way you talk, the way you behave, your systems, your database, everything. Everything's about vendor. Vendor domination. And what sits under that is our measure of success. What's your GCI? Don't know? This is how we measure ourselves. If you write that, you must be seriously good. If you write, I'm going to write more than you. Who are you recruiting? Oh, we're recruiting for this CGI. How many people at a million? I mean, everything is this CGI. I don't even know what it stands for. CGI, 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 CGI. Oh, GCI. See, I didn't make that up. I didn't make that up. That's what we do. That's what we do. That is our culture. That's our industry. That's what it's all about. That's how we measure success in this industry. That's how we measure success in our businesses. And anyone who's studied culture and business, and there would be a few of you here, what do you think the best way to engage people is? Do you think it's money? It's not. It's proven. Money's got nothing to do with it. You've got to have a purpose. It's not money, I can tell you. I'm a business owner. It's got nothing to do with money. Yet why do we walk around like this in a slumber talking about and measuring ourselves as individuals, ourselves as groups and ourselves as businesses based and measured purely on money? And I come back. That's the message that we send. I've been getting that message in this industry for 22 years. I absolutely can't stand it. I cringe at it. That's what I was brought up with. And you wonder why they don't trust us when that's the message we send and that's the message we throw out to the market. CGI money, superstar this, that, this many. That's exactly what we regurgitate. That's what they receive. And we still sit here and wonder, why don't they trust us? Put the mirror up. Don't make the same mistakes that we've made. You've got to change the message. I'm going to skip through this because I'm running over time. If I could break it down to this and I could make some suggestions, I can guarantee you great teams will annihilate great agents. The idea about a great agent, the superstar, I can tell you a great team will annihilate them. And that will be proven into the future, I'm sure. Greater scale and capability is definitely going to give you greater outcome. There was an example of that today. Alex Phillips said the first thing is more human resources on a listing. It's key. It doesn't get much better than him in this country, and that's what he's doing. That tells you a very good sign. It's got to be greater than him. You guys, we have to accept, that parts of this service chain are going to be automated. And you've got to accept it's not going to be by you. You have to accept that. Stop worrying about whether open agent or whatever they're called is good, bad or indifferent. They're here, they're going to participate, they're going to be a part of our ecosystem, and you guys have got to think, how can we then work with that, not work against it? And I don't have an answer for you, but you have to start thinking about that in a creative way, not in a defensive way. There's going to be much, much more of that. My personal view is, and this is just from my understanding, it's very, very, very difficult what we do. So difficult. We've got to get out of this mindset that you can pick someone up, put them in a training facility, walk them through, and they walk out the other side in 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, and they're going to be a good agent. They ain't. Only way that you really build your practice and you can really build some human service element to whatever it is you're going to provide is simply through experience. And that's important because as soon as the leadership of this industry start to realise that, we'll change the way that we deal with people, because it's got to change. It's got to change. So agent in the future? I don't know. But I highlight that because in many ways it's up to a lot of the people in the room what that is. All I say to you is don't dismiss how we should be looking at this problem. There's too much dismissiveness. There's too many people in this industry walking around the issue and not putting the issue on the table. put the issue on the table, accept it, and let's start coming up with solutions rather than falling into the same mistakes that we made. And I can tell you, you don't want to be faced with that situation with fee for service going down, because a lot of people will not be real estate agents in the future. We've got to turn it around, and we can. But it's going to take creative thinking and new solutions, not old ones. Thank you.
Thanks, Shannon. Shannon, can I just say, leading into this session, Shannon's thought I might push it to 15 minutes, and I'll just see how I go. And then that little concept when Shannon came in and went, oh shit, was the fact that he saw the time's up kind of thing. So Shannon, well done, awesome. I think GCI should be actually changed to Great Connections with Integrity. That's what I think GCI actually stands for. So round of applause for Shannon. So moving right along, the next particular gentleman I'm introducing has done over, and this is sort of mind-boggling for me, 20,000 auctions in Australia and New Zealand. Probably the reason why REI New South Wales has named him the #1 auctioneer for the group. Now, as CEO of the agency, Peter has an incredible role to play in the next generation of where that business goes to. Let's welcome Peter. Hi, Peter. It's great to have you here.
I probably should start by saying that I'm not the CEO. I might be fired, given that I'm the director of operations, which kind of doesn't mean anything really. It's just a title that I invented. But Matt LaHood would be pretty gutted to hear that he's been replaced in one statement. Anyway, look, thanks very much for coming. And I said to John when he asked me to speak, I said, look, I'd be honoured to speak, and I was lucky enough to be able to engage with a different audience at Parliament House. But when he told me I was last, I wasn't too enthused, because I know what it's like to be last. So I do apologise, and I am going to try and get through this as quickly as possible. What you'll be happy to know is that I don't have any slides. So what I thought that I'd do is just tell you exactly what I think. Sorry? Oh, sorry, I do, which is my headline. Which one? So let's go this way. There we go. Okay, so this is what I just want to talk about. And I just want to give you a little bit of background. And I just want to say that I want to talk and just talk. No brand, no prejudice, no advertisement. And I just want to give you a bit of background on, I guess, my qualification. My qualification is that, I got into this business because when I was 16 years old, I decided that, real estate sounded like a pretty cool thing to do. And I did some work experience. I did that in the Balmain marketplace. It was with a franchise group. The thing that I really enjoyed about that is that the guys that I met very early on, they were pretty flash dressers. They drove really nice cars. They turned up the houses. They opened doors. They talked a little bit to buyers. And then kind of it just came together. Kind of the deal was done. They worked outside, which I really enjoyed. Like my dad is in the plumbing industry. He wanted me to be a plumber, but I kind of I like the dress sharp thing. So I decided that I wanted to be outside and dress nice. So I thought real estate could be a good thing for me. These guys didn't look too stressed. In fact, they were having the time of their lives, because this is back in 1988. So for those of you that go back that way and weren't born in that year, that you'll remember what it was like back then. And these guys to me were like movie stars, and that was kind of when I knew it was for me. I started my first job when I was 18, and I'm now 45, so you can do the math. Over the time, I've had a couple of franchises. I've made a few sales, and I've called a few auctions, as Michael said. If you know what a microfiche is and you think that that's from the sea, you're in the wrong target market for me when I was around. There was no such thing as RP data and all that kind of stuff. There was no mobile phones. The internet hadn't been invented. There was no emails. There was no CRMs, certainly no social media and all the rest of it. And over this time, I guess, really from then to now, I've seen a little bit of what's happened in the industry. So really, I guess, in preparation for today, I just want to share a few things with you that I've observed. And one of those is, being in the digital age, I kind of thought, well, what tech has replaced us? Now, sales data, well, anyone can get that stuff. Listing data, they can get that stuff. Auto responses, So you don't need to talk to people. Knowing about areas where you can Google that stuff and you can find that stuff out, it's pretty easy. Buyer and tenant databases and follow-up systems and even the property valuation space has all been impacted on our industry. And I guess the thing is, you then think about what happens next. And the thing that happens next is, it could be, online inspections. It can be, is there greater transparency in the negotiation process, whether that's through tech or some other method? Is it online auctions? And there's a whole range of different things. You could go on and on and on. The question is, what do we do about that? And we have to ask ourselves that question, which many speakers have sort of raised today. Is it what value do we offer? And what are we really getting paid for? And as John said at the very, very beginning, is that we're at a crossroad. And at Parliament House, when we had a discussion, and I did my speech, it was pretty much like this. I was actually the second last speaker, and pretty much all my points were taken. And the only thing that really sort of, I guess, got me a little bit of credibility with that speech is that what I talked about kind of resonated with the room, and it was because I talked about the fact that I was embarrassed about the disruptors, and I think everyone in that room basically sort of agreed with me sincerely. I was embarrassed and I was upset by stuff that I saw, and that's talking about these companies that sort of profess to be the same as us, but they're not. They say that they do certain things that we do, but they don't. And the reality is that the public don't really see the discernible difference between what we offer and what they offer, and that's the problem. But I thought about that, and I thought, well, I kind of wondered why really that I was frustrated by that, and I was embarrassed by that, and that seemed to resonate with everybody in the room. And I kind of had this really strange thought that, maybe in some way they were right. Maybe the perception that they have of us is true. And the thing about today, which is really interesting, and Shannon, it's always difficult to follow Shannon as a speaker, but he hit the nail on the head, is that, we don't confront these things. We don't accept that, we all say comfortably that we are not part of that mix, but let's be honest, in some ways, we all are. We've done those things that we say others shouldn't do. And we have, as Shannon said, we've created the problem. And, it is up to the younger generation. I think that's the thing that inspires me the most about what is happening today, is that the younger generation will actually make that change. They're going to be supported by the people that have created that problem. And I'm sure that together we're going to be working very well to make sure that that is something that we shouldn't fear, we should face. And I guess the thing is if any exposure without attention and remedy creates erosion, and we are responsible for the erosion of the standards of the real estate industry. The thing about disruption is that what I think is really interesting is that, and I talk about it all the time, I talk about the Uberification of industries and stuff like that, and that's kind of become a bit of a cliche. The thing about it is it's not a disruptor at all. If you actually look at it, what did Uber do? Well, Uber just made it better for the customer. That's all they did. Taxis, I still catch taxis. I don't know about you guys, but I flip between a taxi and an Uber. I've got a choice now. I enjoy the fact that I know where the actual Uber is going to be, but I used Silver Service the other day on the app and I can see where they are too. So they've just lifted their game. So in some ways I think we shouldn't be looking at disruptors as disruptions. You should be looking at disruptors as a way to improve the industry. So really they should be improvers, because the great thing about these companies that put that stuff on television commercials and all these other sort of tech things that are coming out saying that we don't offer value, is that what it's done is that it's created this. It's created this movement, and it's created a future, I believe, genuinely for the industry, one that if we didn't do it, we wouldn't have. John said earlier too, if it's good for the customer, it's good for the business. And my statement is that, best for the customer, best for us. Customer first, must be. And the greatest thing about what's happened with all of this is that we are in a position now to make a decision about that. The trusted advisor is really interesting, because that is a true definition of the fact that we must act in the interests of others and not our own. I go back to the very early days, and listening to Shannon, it made me think about a lot of the training that I did and that I've done, that I've presented. It's so hard to try and tell people the right words and the dialogue and everything to get around what you actually want to say. Talk about price. I debated for years why we shouldn't talk price, how we get around it and all the rest of it. and it was bloody hard. But today, just tell them. Just tell them the truth. I think the best thing that ever happened is about this whole underquoting thing. You know, we put on our agency agreements a figure. We actually published that at the open for inspection to say this is what we told the seller. There it is. We're not going to tell you the reserve. We don't know that yet, but we certainly will tell you what we told the seller. It's all there. It's all documented. So I guess if we don't strip down, review and reflect honestly without genuine, I guess, self-preservation at the heart of our own appraisal, then only then can we really understand and then commence the path to professionalism. If there were no sort of purple bricks or lead gen companies, the question is, would we be talking about this? You know, we've all in some ways been crap agents. And I guess the best thing about all of this is that we acknowledge that we have been there, and we acknowledge that we've got to move on from that place. And the thing about, I guess, integrity, and I really hate that word, but real integrity is not a description. It's actually something that is ingrained in you or it's not. And that is a choice that you get to make. Pride, I think, is really underestimated. I think one of the things that's driving this agenda is that we want to be proud. Jesse Davidson, I don't know if he's here, he's probably going to have to do an auction, but Jesse talked about, you know, that he wants to be excited to say that he's an agent. And for 27 years, when I meet people for the first time and they ask me what I do, I don't really want to tell them because I just don't know what their reaction is going to be, because I kind of expect that it'll be low, not high. I want that to change. We need professional standards to reinvent our industry. We need to lift our value to the market. And when listening to what Shannon had to say, it resonates absolutely, I'm sure, with everybody in this room, is that there is pressure on fees. We've got to look at it right in the eye and deal with it. If you look at what's going to happen in this industry, my view is really simple. There's going to be a high, there's going to be a low. We're not going to get rid of the low fee providers. They're going to come in, and they're going to come in droves. Where there's going to be pressure is that middle. So if you're not sort of pitching to the highest standard and you're in that middle market, you're going to be squeezed. You're going to be out. And I think that everything that everybody's talked about today about, you know, industry knowledge, all that kind of stuff, unless we can provide value to that transaction beyond just what we say that we do or beyond our own sort of perceptions of what success is through GCI, as Shannon mentioned before, then we're going to find that really, really difficult. The discernible difference between bots and pretenders and ourselves, we're going to be conscious of that. We've got to have a real, genuine view of professionalism and understand it's not a badge. Can't be removed. It's who we are to the core. It's got to be exactly who we are. There's no halfway. And I guess the thing is that just to take that statement, it's a question of which one we want to be, because there only will be professionals or amateurs in the future. And if we truly love what we do, if we have genuine pride in how we do it, we believe and we demonstrate all that we offer to our clients and ensure that our existence is not just ingrained, but it becomes our DNA in the whole property transactional process, then we will succeed. There was a quote from a trainer that I was 18 years old, and I remember this. And Shannon said something very similar to this, which is interesting. And what she said, it was Miff Porter, and she said, if you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always had. And I think that today it's our collective decision and your choice tomorrow as to whether we are going to be a professional or an amateur. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Pete.
Oh.
I just need to show you what I'm working with here.
All right, yeah.
And I thought you had like an instant upgrade. So later on, what we're going to do is going to take a photo of this, you and I, and we're going to send it to Matt.
Oh, good.
And just say, congratulations, Matt. You've now changed your role.
Oh, good. Excellent.
Yeah, is it magnifies it?
There we go. Okay, well, I'm happy with that.
Round of applause for Peter.
Cheers.
Thank you, appreciate it. So some outstanding thinking and thought process, both from Shannon and also Peter then. And by the way, Peter, I really love the professional or amateur. It's literally that whole step up or step out of the professional well and truly, which is great. We're going to move. Let me just see. Can I see any movement from? We're ready. We should be. Okay, very good. One of the things that I think is appropriate is is how to start a movement. And if you haven't watched this particular TED Talk, I'd love you to jump on and have a look at it. But this is a couple of minutes just to show how a movement is created, and tech being what it is, here we go.
So ladies and gentlemen, at TED we talk a lot about leadership and how to make a movement. So let's watch a movement happen, start to finish, in under 3 minutes and dissect some lessons from it. First, of course, you know, a leader needs the guts to stand out and be ridiculed. But what he's doing is so easy to follow. So here's his first follower with a crucial role. He's going to show everyone else how to follow. Now notice that the leader embraces him as an equal. So now it's not about the leader anymore, it's about them, plural. Now there he is calling to his friends. Now if you notice that the first follower is actually an underestimated form of leadership in itself. It takes guts to stand out like that. The first follower is what transforms a lone nut into a leader. And here comes the second follower. Now it's not a lone nut, it's not two nuts, 3 is a crowd, and a crowd is news. So a movement must be public. It's important to show not just the leader, but the followers, because you find that new followers emulate the followers, not the leader. Now here come 2 more people, and immediately after, 3 more people. Now we've got momentum. This is the tipping point. Now we've got a movement. So, notice that as more people join in, it's less risky. So those that were sitting on the fence before now have no reason not to. They won't stand out, they won't be ridiculed, but they will be part of the in crowd if they hurry. So, over the next minute, you'll see all of the those that prefer to stick with the crowd, because eventually they would be ridiculed for not joining in. And that's how you make a movement. But let's recap some lessons from this. So first, if you are the type, like the shirtless dancing guy, that is standing alone, remember the importance of nurturing your first few followers as equals. So it's clearly about the movement, not you. Okay, but we might have missed the real lesson here. The biggest lesson, if you noticed, did you catch it? Is that leadership is over-glorified. That yes, it was the shirtless guy was first, and he'll get all the credit, but it was really the first follower that transformed the lone nut into a leader. So as we're told that we should all be leaders, that would be really ineffective. If you really care about starting a movement, have the courage to follow and show others how to follow. And when you find a lone nut doing something great, have the guts to be the first one to stand up and join in. And what a perfect place to do that, at TED. Thanks.
Very good. I thought that was appropriate, John, for us to share that particular moment in time. Let's move straight on to the panel, and let's bring our panellists up to the front. And this is the last session before we wrap and have some drinky poos for those of you that would like to. Let's bring John, Shannon, Peter, and 2 people that you haven't seen today, but really, do they need much introduction? Chris Maud and Leanne Pilkington. Let's bring them up. Hey. Shannon, that's you. That's you. Shannon, that's you. Yeah.
Get up, Whitney.
Yeah. Come on down. We've got handhelds here. Look, I think the first thing that I'd love just to do in this discussion is, you know, your thoughts on today, and just by way of very, very brief introduction, Leanne is the only female managing director of a franchise group within New South Wales, and only a handful really across Australia and New Zealand for that matter, and makes an incredibly valuable contribution to the profession overall. Chris, I'm not sure when we met, so but it's a long time ago, and I think 30 years you've been involved in the profession?
Not quite that old, yes, it's getting close there.
Okay.
It's not far.
And you know, some time at Heljo Hooker in terms of running the real estate operation, 500 offices, and also now at McGrath, you play a head role in terms of franchise development and making that happen. So fantastic to have you all here to share. John, you're going to go last, so you don't need a microphone.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
I was just going to explain who these people are. This is part of our property professional advisory group. So if I'm the lone nut, what are you guys then? You all sort of came on board, probably. Yeah.
But we don't need to do that now.
No, we won't do that
Okay,
now.
good.
No, it's been a while. So yeah, look, these guys have been incredibly supportive, and in addition to the rest of the advisory group, which has got Ewan and Brad Corbell-Isles and Brett Hunter, and Kylie Walsh. Have I forgotten anyone? Was it? That's it. Yep. So
Yeah.
great bunch of people who
Yeah.
really help sort of forge this path.
Yeah, great. So Leanne, the first question, quite a broad question, your overall thoughts on today and the potential impact that it has for the profession?
I've been really excited about what I've seen today, both on stage and the quality of people that are actually here. I can't believe that we're still having the conversation about standards and the fact that agents don't necessarily return calls and don't do the things that we know that have to be done. And I think Shannon's point, we actually have to put the problem on the table, and we need to be honest about the things that we are not doing and that we should be doing, and we really do need to have that conversation, sadly, still.
Yeah, it's interesting. I remember an RP Data survey that came out and was all about vendors, and I said to Kylie RP Data, I said, but vendors are not the issue. Of course you can get reasonable ratings from them. It says the buyers are the actual issue. So fortunately I have done that work, and clearly there's a bigger gap there, well and truly.
And interestingly, Kylie actually presented at a conference that I was at last week on that data. And so many agents in the room were actually quite offended by what Kylie had to say about the lack of support of buyers. And it's like, you know what, guys, you've got to wake up and smell the coffee, because that is what people, it's not like Kylie made it up. That is the perception of the buyers in the market, and that is our reality.
Yeah, yeah. And Chris, your view on today?
I probably want to start by saying thank you for attending, because that's part of this movement, is everybody needs to get on board and make a clear decision about being part of it. And you know, I'm part of it because I've got a young family and I want to know that they've got that opportunity to become agents. And I love agents. I honestly don't know why, but I love hanging out with them. I live with one. It's everything. I think we're some of the best people in the world, honestly, to hang out with. And I just want to know that the industry is going to be strong when my youngest, if he decides he wants to get into the industry, that it's going to be there. And quite frankly, it's up to each one of us. We can't ourselves as individuals fix these issues. It's up to all of us together as a group. And I just love the fact that this isn't about brands. This is about all of us just understanding if we leave it up to others to fix, it's not going to be fixed, because yes, we'll be disrupted, and yes, we already know about the disintermediators that are taking away parts of our role at the moment. And the problem is we've all stuck our head in the sand for many years. And I agree with Shannon, for the younger ones here, honestly, you're not guilty. It's those of us sitting up here that probably are, and we've just realised now's the time we just need to get cracking in and make that change. Let's do it together, and let's be, as John McGrath said earlier, be that pebble that hits the water. But you know what? Pebble's not enough. Let's throw a big rock in and let's really rock this thing.
Yeah, fantastic. Peter, for you?
Oh, look, I'm the same. I'm actually so excited about where we're at right now. This is just a time that is well overdue. I'm really glad to be a part of this group and be able to have an impact on the future. Because, like Chris, it worries me greatly that if we don't do this, then there won't be one. So this isn't a choice that we get to make. It's actually something that we must do. And if we don't jump down that, then we've got no one to blame but ourselves. And the great thing about everyone here in this room is that there is, I feel anyway, a sense of, well, there's going to be a whole heap of people join us on that dance floor, much like it was up there. And then from here, it's going to be then what we do from here, then back out in the field, because it's very easy to just slip back into the old behaviours. So I hope we can continue this momentum, and really is inspiring to me, being in the industry for 27 years, to see so many people with such a strong commitment to making change. So that's what I'm excited about.
Yeah, great. Shannon?
Well, look, I pretty much said what I thought.
No, on today.
I only just turned up before I talked, to be honest. But look, I would say this. Me getting up and having a rant, and I can certainly say from my own personal experience, I'm frustrated. And for what it's worth, I sort of have that approach to my people as well, respectfully, of course, respectfully. The reason why I'm very frustrated is because we have had a lot of opportunity to change, and we haven't. And I will say, from somebody who has existed mostly on the ground like you guys as agents, and then out of sheer madness decided that I'd decide to run a business of this nature. The most difficult thing is leaving today is actually trying to do something. It's actually really hard. The reason why that is because people development and learning is so hard. And that's one part that we've got to be patient with ourselves about, because our whole business is about people development, and it's giving them a vision and giving them a direction and guiding them in terms of where we think they need to be. And mostly what we focus on is to focus on what not to do. And that's really hard to do because, as you said, you've got to keep circling back and circling back and circling back. You always make mistakes. You'll always mess it up. You'll always, because you're a human being, you always want to do the right thing, but you'll go over this way because there's a commission there. That's basically what we're faced with. So it's no small feat, this sort of thing. It's not. But if we commit to it, and when it does start with people, what we do have to do is we have to prepare to say we're not prepared to do this anymore. We're not prepared to do this anymore. We're not prepared to do this anymore. And that starts at a leadership level, because if you don't do it or the leaders won't do it, there's absolutely no way your staff's going to do it. I know that from experience. I do. So this is really challenging. And I say that too because I kind of disagree with Chris. Most of my career in real estate, I haven't enjoyed myself. It has conflicted with who I am as a human being. I don't like the way I behave. That's how I've experienced it. But there's so many elements of real estate that I've really enjoyed: stimulation, creativity, the earning capacity, people, meeting a lot of things, growing as a human being. It's been wonderful. I love you too. But this is really important because as a business owner, that ridiculously silly decision to come and become that means I need to consider what it's going to be like for them. And that's the responsibility that I have. And I know how hard that is because I've gone through that journey. It's bloody hard. You want to do something, do it well, and do it ethically. And I know that most people want to do that, but they need to be shown that. Because we're all human beings and we're all going to get sidelined and we're going to get, you could just do this. If you just don't say this, you might get this. If you kind of let that one go, you could do this. But we can't do that anymore. Can't do it anymore.
Thanks, Shannon.
It's finished.
Yep.
Sorry.
It was heading towards it's Shannon's second session kind of thing. Just heading that way, that little bit.
I know where I've seen that shirt before, actually.
Yeah.
It might have been Jerry Falwell on, Evangelist TV, mate.
So John, your view on today?
Yeah, look, I love what Shannon had to say then, but when he said that I haven't enjoyed it, I've enjoyed every moment of it. And maybe it's just how I started out with it. It was a really interesting journey for me in terms of having a moral compass that sort of guided me what I was doing. And I suppose that's for my team as well, and particularly the people that joined our team in the early days, and Andrew, you're a perfect example. It's like, that's what it's about. And I think that's a really interesting thing. When you know that's how you connect those dots, that's how you do it. It becomes understandable. But if you've been trained down a certain way, you're going to bend and duck and weave because there's always an easier way. There's always a shortcut. I do this talk around on the roadshows at the Institute, and I talk about the compliance laws. And what I say is it's just as easy to comply as it is to not comply. So every time a new piece of legislation comes in, it's like, okay, how can we get around this? It's just a bizarre way of thinking. But you're right, mate, it's a journey. It's a journey, and there's a whole lot of stuff along that way that is going to be really challenging. And because we're effectively relearning what we do. We're changing behaviours in a way we've never seen before. So challenges, absolutely, they're going to be there. But I think from a leadership perspective, we've got enough people in the industry that believe in this to make it happen. But sure, as we said, it's not going to be for everyone. But the journey begins. We will be creating a blueprint just to make life a little bit easier. There will be a roadmap. Now, how that's applied will be the probably the most interesting thing, and how that's going to be applied in each individual organisation will be interesting. But unless we do that, people go, where the hell do I start? Where do I start? And that journey, I think, will unfold much, much clearer over the coming months. As I said, there's a 2-year journey to get there, but the behaviours start right away. And I think Shannon's right on the note. We can't do that anymore. We can't do that anymore. Start setting some non-negotiables. Michael asked the panel that one. What are those non-negotiables? And we've got, say, in our business, we've got these 20, we call them essentials, because like you told me not to make it negative, which was non-negotiables. So there are now 20 essentials that we must do in our business in every transaction. They are the non-negotiables. And then there's a roadmap of the journey of all the touch points. We had 354 client touch points that had an expectation that had to be met along that journey. So they're the sort of things, when you start putting those things into your business, you actually have standards that you can apply. And anyone knows Megan Jaffe over in, Ray White over in Jumeirah in New Zealand. You know, she started an ethics committee, how long ago was that?
4 years ago.
4 years ago. And now she's got a standards committee, and they've actually totally redefined their business by that. And it was an internal movement. And I think you've been doing a similar thing with your ethics. That's where it really hits home. And I talk about change within. But what we want to do, let's give people the map. Let's enable them to do it, because I don't think that's ever existed.
And John, just bringing Megan into it, you know, I've had the pleasure of coaching the Megan Jaffe business now for 4 or 5 years. And one of the things that's interesting is they're using the Net Promoter Score as part of the Ray White group. And it's interesting that you don't get to become the #1 agent within the team based on revenue. It will be a combination of revenue and your Net Promoter Score. So straight away, if you're not delivering a great result for your clients, then you're not going to be acknowledged as the #1 based on a GCI. Although we now know that GCI stands for Great Connections with Integrity. Thank you. Excellent. Just want to reinforce that a little bit today. So I think this is more for Leanne and Chris. You've got multiple offices and so on. How do you see something like this being in place? I mean, look, one individual here, you can go, okay, I can step up and do this. You're talking now about group, franchise owners, teams. For the McGrath business, that's Queensland, New South Wales, ACT and Victoria. And it's predominantly New South Wales. Leanne, from your point of view, how do you see that working? Just a little question.
It's about taking people on the journey, and thankfully there are enough business owners who are passionate about it that are willing to share their journey. So people like John, like Ewan, like so many other people that I've been lucky enough to connect with over my years, they're happy to come and speak to our people and talk about the journey that they've been on and shared what's worked, shared what's been difficult. And I love that in the industry now, that people are prepared to take their time out and actually go and share that information with other business owners who typically, you know, may well be competitors, but people are still, we understand how important this is, and we're all happy to work together to achieve it.
So really, one of the things that you're seeing is, hey, we're not competitors, we're colleagues with this, and we've got a responsibility not to our brand, to the entire profession to step it up a notch or two, and to draw on those resources. Are you also looking for your early adopters in there?
Without doubt, we need to. One of the guys, in fact, I don't remember who said it earlier, but it basically the top performers in the industry, the people that we do look up to, are already behaving like this, and so they are role models to so many within the industry. So it's really important that they are out there and being seen and being heard at conferences, at events, not just talking about GCI. But also talking about the professionalism and the importance of that real connection with consumers.
Yeah, fantastic. Very, very good. Chris, for you?
Yeah, I concur. It's an industry challenge, and it's up to all of us to get on and work on it. So I think we've got to start with the industry first, and which is, you know, where we're starting. Little doubt within each business there'll be an owner of this process and the evolution, and I think that's part of the blueprint that John's talking about. You know, we have a responsibility in our role specifically to show you all the next steps in that part of the journey. So I believe people will be on board with it, but they just want to know how to do it, and they're busy in their business at the moment. But part of doing it is specifically what Shannon's saying, is just understand what those non-negotiables were. And I spoke to an agent the other day who talked to me about 5 different ways of presenting price and positioning it. And to me, there's one clear way is give them a clear price guide and let the consumers know. I'm definitely a believer in that. So it's changing those behaviours specifically, I think, are important. But yeah, it's definitely the blueprint. And I think it's about the personal journey. So I, years ago, was heavily involved with REI New South Wales, sitting on the Auctioneers Chapter Committee. Then I stopped. I gave up because I kind of got sick of some things and just went off and did my daily business. And I actually realised that I was part of the problem of the industry, that unless you actually step up and make an effort personally, whether that's just in your business, but also take a role within the industry if you value the industry and you love the industry. So I've gone out of my way, and I guess that's why I'm the only independent director on the REIA board, that I just want to give back. I had a national role. I understood that I could add value there. And so I'm giving that time to make sure that we've got a stronger industry. So I would say that every person has to make an effort to make a difference, everyone. And you've got to do it in your own individual way within your own teams, within your own office, and then share the message and the journey. Yeah, great. And Peter, for you, with a new brand that's definitely got national aspirations, what do you see in terms of property professional being integrated within the agency? How do you see that?
Look, I don't think it changes much to what to John, Leanne, and Chris said. To be honest, doesn't matter what sort of brand we've got or what platform we operate under, really. But the thing that I guess, the one thing that I do know in being involved in this committee, and I know it's not on point on your question because I think that's been very well answered by my colleagues, is that this is really hard. Really hard. If you look at the stuff that we have to do as an industry, and John said 2 years, it's 2 years and it's going to be really hard. There's a lot of paperwork, there's a lot of process, there's all these different requirements and everything else. And John gave us this really ugly purple presentation from a guy. I know you didn't do it, but we received it. And anyway, it made me sick. Because I was looking at it thinking, how are we going to do this? Like, it is just so hard. But that's so good. Like, it is so good because you kind of get over that and you go, it is hard, it must be hard. If it's not hard, it's not worth doing. And it just means that if we don't, in all of our businesses, brands aside, process aside, everything else, if we don't embark on this and go through this challenge, then we're all mad. And none of us are mad here in this room. We will be the leaders that'll go out in the field. We will, as Shannon said in his speech, it's not about what happens in your own business, it's what happens in your competitors' business around you. It does affect you. Everything you guys do affects me. Everything I do affects you. We're going to do this together. Don't do it together, then we're buggered. And it's going to be hard, and that's great. That's what I'm really excited about.
And Peter, it's important to know that everything is hard before it's easy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So on the other side of hard is actually easy.
Yeah.
And it reminds me of cycling in California. Those hills are pretty significant and hard, but on the other side, it's a dream run. Yeah. Very well said. Shannon, for you, within Bresic Whitney, it sounds like occasionally the guys might get a lecture from you or an update. You were sort of mentioning that a little bit earlier. And
I give them very direct feedback.
Direct feedback. Okay, very good. Excellent. Not critiquing, feedback. I love your shift in.
Well, actually, I'll wait for your question.
You go.
Okay, so what I was going to say was, and this is probably, and this is probably the industry. Everybody in the industry thinks they can be Alex Phillips, or thinks they can be Monique Dower, or thinks they can be Piers van Hamburg. The reality is that's not possible. And that's really important is because, and I respect Alex very much because as an agent, what he understands is so far beyond what most of us can ever grasp. And I know that because I've been in transactions more than most people here. And it's very hard for Alex to articulate that to us. But that's really important because at a business level, if we're all trying to be Alex, we're going on the wrong path. It ain't going to work that way. And this is important because the message is, if you be like Alex or Monique or Piers, you'll be okay. But it's like going to the gym. And this is, I hate to use that analogy. I don't go. But it's like going to the gym and just picking up a dumbbell and doing that. and you get a really big bicep and the rest of you don't change. In terms of delivering service. Because Alex is one person. He's one person. And that as a solution to everybody try and be like Pierce or be like Monique or be like Alex, that's not the solution. But that's the message. That's the message that we all get. And I can tell you that an individual will not give us the solutions. Because as individuals, and I know that, I have 45 sales agents, not every two of them are alike. They're all different people. And their practice is different based on the fact that they're different human beings and different characteristics. And that's important because at a leadership mentor level, if we're not aware of that, then what guidance are we giving? And when you say it's hard because individuals and human beings are involved. It's not about real estate, it's about humanity. And if we want to remain human in this process somewhere, then we've got to consider ourselves from a human point of view, not this quasi-real estate demigod point of view, which is what we keep saying and keep presenting, because it's impossible.
And Shannon, to that point, up at ARIC this year, I had a conversation with Kevin Turner. I said, Kevin, I'm over the coaches that are out there and saying, unless you're $1 million agent, there's something wrong with you. Because I know a lot of great people who are writing, 400, 500,000, and they're actually really good human beings.
Yeah.
They're great agents. They're committed to doing a great job, and potentially they could go faster along that lines. Versus someone who I want to be $1 million agent as an example, and the frustration I have is, oh, what do you want to do that? Well, isn't that what you're supposed to do? Someone told me I should.
Yeah.
That's the most hollow experience, and the challenge that I've got is I actually deal with some of them after they've actually been there, and like I'm hollow.
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
there's nothing there.
Yeah.
And it's not they're not a great person. They've just actually lost the plot in terms of what's really important to them.
Yeah, it's the disillusion where we all kind of go off on this circus. And I must say, from an observer, I don't find the engagement from the industry very helpful. I don't find it constructive. I don't think we're asking the right questions. I don't think that we're actually addressing what we need to address. And that's relevant because every time we get the chance, all we want to do is bow to the people that earn the most money. And the reality is that actually doesn't help you. It doesn't help you, I know that, because real estate business is about people. And your ability to deliver a great service is about the health and the well-being and the development of your people, not about trying to make every single person a superstar. You only have to use sporting analogies to work out what are the culture of a great organisation that succeeds. It's never about one person. Yet real estate is still stuck in the 90s. We still think and we develop our culture and our beliefs based on what was actually relevant in the 80s and the 90s. The world has moved on. And we have to move on. And that's taking nothing away from the really good individuals, because the really good individuals play a huge, huge role in that. And it's great to see them come today and share their time, because they're really important. But that doesn't mean every single person that comes into this ecosystem is going to be like Alex Phillips, because it ain't going to happen.
And just on that point, if you do want to, Kevin Turner recorded a series of sessions around not being $1 million agent, but being an absolutely amazing human being. So it could be worthwhile having a listen to and sharing it with some of your colleagues. John, we're close to time, so I'm going to hand back to you to do a final kind of comment on today as Grand Poobah. Is that yeah?
Grand Poobah, shirtless man. Okay, look. First of all, I want to thank all our speakers. Absolutely, we wanted a diverse group of people to talk today, and I think we achieved that. And we got a different perspective from a whole lot of people. And I think what the objective was for you guys was to understand why this is happening, two, what can be done about it, and three, what your role can be in the future. So today it was planting a seed, as Michael said right at the beginning. It was just to give you a taste of what the future can look like, and then up to you as to what your level of involvement will be. Leadership is going to be critical, and it's going to come from many, many people, and the movement is growing. When I get Craig Ponty, for example, tell me the other day, John, I'm really impressed with what's happening along this line, whereas 12 months ago he told me it was a whole lot of bullshit. Right? Now, that's interesting, right? That's really interesting, because those conversations and planting those seeds is actually making a change. People are realising that they can't do what they've always done. There's a different world out there, there's a different level of expectation. So thank you all for attending, but before we go, there's been a number of questions about the current New South Wales reform package and where that's heading. I think it's important for everyone to understand, because there was a bit of talk about CPD, Carolyn was talking about it as well, what's going on there. And that's going to become a reality. Now, the idea, again, this is not the answer, as I said at the beginning, nor anything we're doing here is the answer. It's just part of the solution long term. Most of it's going to be up to you. But the CPD environment will change and enable us to actually create a lot more foundation knowledge within agents. One, the licensing environment will also change, where you'll actually have to do proper courses to get into the industry. You'll have to do ongoing training and actually get your license. To open a business, you'll have to have a licensee in charge qualification to do that, and 3 years experience. We've got to take this seriously, because the person or the people who are finding the detriment in what we're currently doing is the consumer. They're getting bad choices given to them, getting bad service and all those things. So yes, the answer is not necessarily in that element, it's part of the solution as well, to actually get this industry into a better place, so it's ready to become a profession. So your CPD in the future there'll be 3 hours compulsory regulatory and compliance training. That's the boring stuff, right? But we have to have it. You can't go out in the field and not know what your responsibilities and obligations are to your community, your consumers, your clients, etc. That's one element. The second element is delivery of optional training. It's compulsory, but it's optional. You can choose what it is. So again, specialised training, commercial agents will have their thing. Property managers will have their thing. It'll be also responsive to what's happening in the marketplace. If you're a licensee in charge, you'll have to do another 3 hours, and that's business-based training, so that you'll run a better business. There'll be HR training, there will be a trust account training, all these things that if you knew what we knew, what goes on behind the scenes, you would be absolutely appalled what's going on in businesses across New South Wales. So when we get to that place, we'll have a better foundation of the industry, and we need that. But all the rest is above the line. That's almost like, that's this iceberg stuff. It's all there. We've got to get above that line to actually show, in terms of the consumer, what are our behaviours, and it's all about behaviours. So that's why I say it's a journey. Everyone's going to take different time frames to get there, but we're committed to it, and it is going to be hard. It's an unknown. That's again what excites me, is I really don't know where this is going to go. All I know, it has to go somewhere, and it's that up. So thank you everyone for coming, and really wish to see you on the journey. Thanks again.
Round of applause for the panel. So that concludes the REI New South Wales Future Agent Summit. Have you enjoyed today? Yeah. I'm feeling a level of mind activation. Hopefully over drinks you'll have the opportunity to network with a few people. And look, I think one of the things that reflects on from my point of view is a race that we don't want to win. In fact, I think that we want to come absolutely last in is something that Shannon talked about, and that is the Office of Fair Trading. If we were coming last in that race in 2 or 3 years' time, then John, this has been a very, very successful journey towards property professional. I've thoroughly enjoyed today, and thank you for allowing me to be part of this journey with you.
Thanks, Michael.
Bye for now. Drinks are served.
For having a vision, my prediction, I'ma be on top of